ashes, ashes, we all fall dead.
You're listening to Paratalkradio with Ted Wolf and Psychic Cindy on Paratalkradio.com. Paratalkradio is your one-stop for all things paranormal, the unknown, and the supernatural. We cover topics such as ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more.
Paratalk is a product of the Genesee Valley Paranormal Investigators. You can join us every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 7 p.m. Central. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, TuneIn, and Google Play. We are a part of AHAM Radio Network and blogtalkradio.com. Live video streaming can be seen on Facebook at facebook.com/paratalkradio and periscope.tv.
To contact us, email paratalkradiohost@gmail.com or search on the web for Paratalk Radio. Paratalk Radio is recorded live at J. Wolf Productions in Ontario, New York. Engineered by John Winter. We are Rochester, New York's only paranormal talk radio show.
The topics, views, and opinions expressed on our show may not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Paratalk Radio, our hosts, or our sponsors. Some of the language on our show may not be suitable for listeners under 16. And now, here are your hosts, Ted and Cindy.
Hi, everybody!
I was wondering if you were going to get it in time, so I wasn't sure.
I did it. I pulled it out.
You pulled it off.
I did.
Pulled it off. That's
I did.
a good thing.
I'm running behind as always.
That's all right. Well, we've got a really long show for you. A lot of fun, a lot of interesting things happening. And we're going to try and squeeze everything in a great professional manner.
as I put my lip gloss on.
And you guys know us now. Come on.
Come on.
So we're just going to have a good time. Everybody, we have Mr. Zach in the house with us tonight. Mr. Invisible John is doing the Jazz Fest tonight. So
we miss our John.
So he isn't here.
But we love Zach, too.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So everybody, hello, Caesar. So everybody can say hi to Zach since Invisible John isn't here. Real quick, I'm going to say hi to Savannah. Hello to Robert, Sheila, Mary, Heidi.
Oh,
Michelle, Caesar.
Stuff.
Oh, are you?
I am.
All right, well, if you're going to be there, then I'm going to click over to Periscope.
Yep, I'm going to be on Facebook.
All right, I'll kick over to the other side. And I got to tell you, folks, that the first person we're going to be talking to here is going to be Matt Moneymaker he's the founder of BFRO, which is a Bigfoot research Bigfoot reefer.
What's on your mind? Just tell us.
Bigfoot research organization.
That was funny.
And second from there is going to be Andrea Perron, who I love and adore. She's one of my favorite people. She just, I don't know, the energy she has sometimes is sort of like yours, Cindy.
Oh,
but
fun.
she is like...
She's like wild like me?
She's amazing. Let's just put it that way.
Awesome.
She's amazing.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and she lived
We
through...
like high energy people, don't we?
Yeah, and she lived through the original Conjuring. The real haunting.
So that's super scary to me.
Yeah, that's very scary. I sat down last night and I watched as many videos of the truth of that. Oh, let's hold on one second here. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Very good. I tried calling right at 5 o'clock, and I couldn't hear a show. So I tried back a few times, but I'm glad we connected.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Hi, Matt.
Yeah.
How are you?
Very good.
Okay, so there's going to be about a 3 or 4 second delay.
Okay, so we're not live yet.
No, we are live.
We are live.
Okay.
But there's still going to be a delay. Now, we're actually having a hard time hearing you a little bit. We've got him all the way up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
All right. Now, what I'll do? Let me switch to something else here. Hang
Okay.
on. Is that much better?
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's beautiful.
That's great.
It's beautiful.
Okay.
That's perfect.
I just had to take you off of Bluetooth.
Hey, we're used to that.
Yes.
You know how it is.
I don't like anything blue.
Blue moon.
Yeah, of Kentucky, right. So, Matt, we should probably kind of explain, and I know you don't know much about us, and but we know some things about you, but that's okay. I'll explain real quick that
We've
Paratalk
been
Radio...
stalking you. It's fine.
Yeah, like Cindy said, we stalked a little bit. We are not your normal radio show, podcast, or video cast. We are straight shooters here. We get to the nitty-gritty and no holds back, and whatever comes out of our mouths comes out of our mouths, and we expect the same from you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so you have to introduce Matt, though, because you were starting to.
I was starting to, and then I got sidetracked.
Right.
All right, so as we were talking, the gentleman on the phone with us...
Andrea later.
Yeah, we'll do that later. The gentleman on the phone with us is Mr. Matt Moneymaker, who is you are the founder of the BFRO, which is the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. Amazing, first off, I have to say, because I am a part of a Bigfoot organization as well, Sasquatch Detectives, or Squatch Detectives with Steve Culls. So I'm excited about this interview,
great.
just so you know.
We love Steve.
Yeah, he's just, I love the guy to death. And I'm actually his, because we're in New York, I'm Western New York's, I can't even think of what they call me now. Like that, I'm like first contact for them if there's a sighting in Western New York or Central New York. I'm the person they contact. What's that?
Which part of Western New York?
Everywhere from, say, Syracuse, Rochester to Buffalo.
Okay, yeah, that's a big piece of New York.
A very big piece.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's all of Western New York, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like
it's all of it.
Upper Western New York.
Upper, yeah. So wherever there's a sighting, I'm the one they contact. But I usually get stuff from different areas. And Steve being closer to the Adirondacks and stuff like that, he gets a lot more, hits than I do, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back here, Mr. Matt Moneymaker was also on Finding Bigfoot on the Animal Planet channel, which ran... Now, how many seasons did that run, Matt? I can't remember.
Say it again. I was plugging in power.
Oh, I'm sorry. How many seasons was that?
Well, I guess in a nutshell, it's kind of complicated. The number of seasons used to mean, back in the day, meant the number of years.
Right.
But now it doesn't.
Oh.
So it was more seasons than it was years, because they would sometimes have more than one season within it.
Oh.
Right.
It used to be very regular, and now they would, they used to... New series used to all start at the same time of year.
Right.
And it was all a mechanical thing because the networks had to make deals with the advertisers, and they would do that during conventions. Like conferences where they'd all come in and so anyway. But then it just broke up. The cable got so big, so many channels that I think it's 11 seasons that was over the course of 7 years or 8 years. Depending, because there was a gap, so you can count that as 7 or 8.
Right, yeah. I thought I heard 8 years, yeah. Yeah. Still, 8 years is a long time.
To the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Exactly. And to the public, it started in 2011, but for us, it really started in 2009.
Yeah.
And when we knew that they wanted to do it, and we were shooting stuff in 2010, and so it was longer than when it first started airing, because there's a long delay between when you're shooting a show, and then when you're shooting a real episode for a show, and then when it finally airs. That's a number of months nowadays. Right. There's sitcoms that they tape on Tuesday and they air on Friday. But for this kind of show that's very that has a lot of post, as they say, a lot of post processing. intermixing interviews and dreams, memory sequences. And so it takes a long time for them to prepare one. And then, of course, the planning to go shooting that episode starts happening many months prior.
Right.
So anyway, it's a long period between when you're first deciding where you're going to go and when people finally see where you've gone.
Right. And I gotta imagine that there's a lot of work, not just for the audio text and video text and all that stuff, but for you guys as well, as in lugging equipment and going to all these locations and travel time, spending time in hotels, motels, camping.
Hotel, motel, holiday Inn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I can't imagine.
It's one of those things where you try to you try to reduce in your mind how much goes into it and how much you do.
Right.
And you minimize it just so you can have a grip on it. But then when other people join you, other people are like, they're kind of dropped into the middle of it. They're just going, oh my, how do you guys do all this?
Right.
And I think the preparation came for me as I was doing, Finding Bigfoot was my second series. It wasn't my first. So the very much the model for the Finding Bigfoot series came from Mysterious Encounters.
I remember
which was
that.
a series
Yes, I
on
do too.
OLN Outdoor Life. Do you remember that, Autumn Williams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was the one who got that show together too, and I was the one who picked Autumn Williams for it.
Wow.
So, and they had said, we want a girl out in front, and they gave me, the the physical parameters of the types that they wanted, and the BFRO is such a large group that I was able to find 4 or 5 that kind of hit the marks they wanted and kind of met their parameters. And Autumn was by far the best talker. And she was just like, she had been on expeditions with our people and been out in the field. She'd done stuff on her own. Her mother had a sighting when she was young. She was really steeped in the thing. So she could just go on. She's the exact kind of character you'd want for unscripted because she just has a lot to say off the top of her head. Mm-hmm. And she brings a lot of personality to it. And that year was it was really hard on her. And so for a lot of reasons, her marriage and the pressure from the producer. And anyway, so that's why. But that was the top show on Outdoor Life Network for the whole time that it was on. And that is, if you watch that show, you go, wow, that is kind of like, even Bobo was in it. You know what I mean? You'll realize that was kind of a precursor to Finding Bigfoot. Wow. And so there was a few years gap. But I'd done expeditions before that. Then I did this series, and then I did a whole bunch of expeditions before and up to Finding Bigfoot. And so when we went to do Finding Bigfoot, there was nothing that I hadn't done before. I had done a TV show on the road. I had done many expeditions. And, of course, I had my vision about, how to do it where it'd be really most exciting. And they would, and most fruitful, too, in terms of evidence, the most effective. And, I didn't want it to be just an entertainment thing. I wanted us to, use the fact that we have all this equipment and all this help, all these cameras, this going to different locations, put that all to work for the aim of bringing back some good footage, good evidence, etc.
Right.
And that I guess that's the angle that I thought that's the angle it would go down. And now I look back and think that was at least the angle that I should have been looking at it. But of course, it came to clash with a lot of different interests, in terms of production company, network, and all those things. And I wasn't unfamiliar with it. And although I didn't agree with all of it, at least I understood it. And of course I don't want to down talk my own show. There's a lot of problems that many people had with it.
Right.
And just various things like always building up to excitement right before the commercial. What was that?
Right.
And then coming back and it's nothing. And then they cut it with the left perception that every sound we heard in the woods was a Bigfoot, not realizing that 99% of the footage from the evening was not seen. And and when we'd hear sounds that things would happen, we would immediately be explaining and saying, okay, it's this, that, I see it's just a rat, or and so they never saw that. They would only see the parts of saying, what's that? And I think that's it. And gave the perception that we step out in the woods and we're hearing, and we think there's Bigfoots around us. But that's, so there was various things that I didn't like just as much as everybody else. But it was just, it's such a more complicated thing. There's so many, as they say, cooks in the kitchen. There's so many masters to serve.
Yeah.
That of course, it's not going to be your pure vision doing it. But now I have a chance I'll be in a position of being executive producer for the next one.
Awesome.
And so I will bring it much closer to what I want, which I think, of course, will bat the ball out of the park in terms of ratings. I think it'll grow and grow and grow. And when people see that we're really it's not artificial in any way. It doesn't seem like we're playing to a formula to meet, formula that they're trying to do so they can make a processing and assembly line of episodes where we can just shoot out, go shoot a whole bunch, and then the people doing the editing kind of know this formula that they have to edit it down to.
Right.
Anyway, now, like I said, this will be my third one, so it'll be it's going to be an improvement. Finding Bigfoot was kind of an improvement over the first one, so again, so this is the next one's going to be. I'm very eagerly looking forward to working on it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I mean, we know that the way TV works, that no matter what it is, whether it be Bigfoot, paranormal, whatever, they take
a lot of editing footage.
And plus the fact is, too, the network wants a certain thing. So, you can send it in, and then they'll send it back to you and say, no, we don't like this, we want this, and they're there to keep people on the edge of their seats. And that's the main premise behind all these things. It isn't really... such as finding Bigfoot. I mean, sure, they wanted them to find Bigfoot or evidence, but at the same time, they just wanted it to be, let's keep these people in their seats and, enthralled with the whole thing. Whether they find something or not doesn't matter. We need to play the spooky music. We have to build it up before the commercial. We have to do, all this stuff. And unfortunately, some of the fans of Finding Bigfoot, after so many episodes, they're like, oh, geez, it's the same old thing. And they're like, well, they never find it. They never do this. They never do that. And unfortunately, then your ratings drop. And then people don't tune into it like they used to.
Right.
But I think there's also that flip side to that. Like when there was a long period of time where there wasn't any episodes, and I remember searching for it because I do enjoy the show. And... I finally found the new. The commercials come out. The commercials come out. The new episode's coming. Blah blah blah. And don't you know, it's a night that I couldn't watch it because I was somewhere else. I was so mad.
No.
So I ended up waiting for So I ended up going back and trying to, because I'm cheap. I don't have one of those DVR things on my DirecTV.
You're so funny.
So whatever. But I had to wait for the playbacks and all that stuff. But I think that suspense where it's not on for a while, it kind of draws or sucks those people back in because, well, are they going to find it this year? Are they going to find it this episode? So, that's my take on some of that,
And that's right. You're right. And that they had actually said almost exactly what you're saying. They said, we want to give it a while because it'll make it more special when it comes back, which is the way they said it.
Special.
But the only other thing on your assessment that's not on spot was, and it would be a natural assumption, what you said, that they really wanted us to get something, but they also needed it to be entertaining and kind of formulaic to make it easier. But there really, it wasn't just that there wasn't a push for us to try to get something. There was actually a push in the opposite direction. And the way that would come out in phrase was, we want to preserve the mystery.
Yeah.
Now, you think about that for a second. And what that really means is we don't really want you to find Bigfoot.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
We want it. It's working that people are still wondering whether or not they are there. And in a way, that's kind of a self-serving approach because it means they don't have to make the extra effort, spend the money, to get something else. They can just film us, playing Scooby-Doo.
Right.
So unless you have that
funny.
kind of, with that?
That was funny.
Yeah, and running around and doing that stuff. And if they can convince themselves, or if you say a producer can convince the other one that that's really the appeal of the show. And look, the ratings are so high with them just running around and them not getting footage of a Bigfoot, but occasionally like analyzing footage or photos that other people have. If that works, then let's not, don't fix it if it ain't broken. And so there was a logic there of like, maybe it's good that they don't get something to preserve, because like, gosh, what would it do if they actually got something? And of course, I knew what it would do, which was it would like quadruple the ratings. Actually.
Right. Yeah. Well, obviously.
Right. It would be all over the news.
You would think, exactly. You would think it's a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how many people say, have this superficial logic. Go, well, of course you can never find Bigfoot. You can't find it because then your show's over. What if you do? I mean, it's just like you can't get it because then there's nothing else there. It's like, duh.
No, Matt, I think in some sense,
get the footage of a Bigfoot, like you're not going to watch the next episode because we thought they got it. Okay, case closed. It's now we know.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I think in some cases, yes, but at the same time, I mean, there's also that that flip side to all of that, which they ignore, they don't even think about in some cases, but I'm sure they did, is like, if you really found something, I mean, like Cindy was saying to me, it'd be on the news, it'd be in the Time magazine, it'd be in National Geographic, it'd be all over the place, and you would think that Animal Planet would be right there going, look what we did.
Right.
You know what I mean? We brought the show here and blah, 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 and of course they would continue on researching it with you guys, saying, okay, I think it's amazing sometimes on how people, especially producers, think about shows like this, because we deal with that with the paranormal. Well, Bigfoot's a part of it, but with the ghost hunting stuff, where the TV shows they play up on it so much, and then boom, nothing at the end. But when they actually find something, they don't care.
Right. What?
Yeah. Like, okay, what do you mean?
Wait,
what do you
just
mean?
happened here?
It's like, what do you mean you don't care? What do you mean you don't want to really know?
The F is going on.
Give me that's unclear. We say when they finally get something. I knew how that was in our case, because it was like we finally got howls, we finally got action by like the last night that we were out, and then you would naturally think, well, hey, stick around there.
Yeah.
Come back next week to the same place and start from that point. And so it looks like we're saying, oh, we found it, but now we don't care, we're leaving on. But how did that apply to the ghost shows? Like they'd get something and see, in our situation, it was because everything was already scheduled to go to the next spot. Plane tickets were bought, hotels were reserved, witnesses were lined up, town hall. I mean, all the stuff was scheduled. It was like a logistical thing. We couldn't just say, you know what, we're going to stay here another week. We can't, logistically, you can't do that when it's that kind of production.
Right.
So I have...
But how was that what was happening with the ghost shows too?
Yeah, in some cases, yeah. I mean, it's just, it's amazing. It's like all these producers have like a psychic connection, and hey, this is what we did, so you guys do this too, and it's just so funny,
So since you said Scooby-Doo, Matt, I have one of our regulars, Robert, who says, "Who plays Velma?" and then I have Ken LeBon, who says, "We couldn't have found Bigfoot if it weren't for you meddling kids." And that dumb dog.
If it wasn't for you meddling kids.
That's right.
No, I have to tell you, Matt, we've actually had two of your co-hosts of the show, I should say, or friends on the show. We've had Cliff on here. We've also had Bobo on here, and I
didn't get to meet.
You didn't get to meet.
Before my time.
Right, it was before your time. But we wanted to get you, and we wanted to get Renee on the show also, and just get your take on all of it. But I mean, there are a lot of people in the state of New York that love the Bigfoot phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of places like the Adirondacks or Whitehall, New York, or even is close to us. I mean, there was sightings in Greece, New York. There was sightings in Nunde, New York. And we're talking 20 minutes from where we are.
Right. Well, yeah,
maybe.
Greece is about a half an hour, 40 minutes, and then day
you're
is
so
a little
lucky.
longer.
Yeah. So in New York.
I wish I had Bigfoots within 20 minutes of me.
Well, the next time we get one, I will send you an email. And
We'll be like, hey,
you gotta come up.
There you go.
We'll give you the FYI.
Well, I have a military. There's a military base nearby here that I know, and it's got two flowing rivers through it. It's pretty close to flowing year-round. And there has been sporadic, occasional incidents or track finds in the winter. So I'm just eager to be, I want to be able to figure out like where the best spots are to look in the winter. But there are regular things up in the mountains, like, Mount Palomar, probably the closest, very reliable area. But that's a couple hours away. And it doesn't look that far on the map, but, there's people don't realize how many mountains there are in Southern California. They see LA as a big flat plain, but it's surrounded by mountains.
Yeah,
and that's where the Bigfoots are at.
Well, look at New York. I mean, people think of New York and they think New York City. And, we have mountains, we have hills, we've got gorges.
We've got valleys.
We got all that stuff. I mean.
Yeah, but where he's talking, like going into San Diego from AZ, it's beautiful, but it is daggum hilly. Can I just say it's hilly?
You mean like we're in PA and they look like mounds, like big boobs?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Well, see, it's the latitude here. See, in New York, you guys are up higher latitude. You're not in the arid part of the country, so it's very green, it's very wet.
Yes.
You have to worry about like running into a deer on the way home. It is a lot more wildlife than you have in Southern California and the Southwest in general. It's like you have to go to high elevations. You have to go to places where it is more wet. The lower you go, the hotter and drier it is. But the other side of that is in the winter, when there's really bad snows and those high elevation areas get super cold, it's easy for animals to escape that just by going downhill.
Right.
Because you can if you're in the mountains of Southern California, you could be 5 foot of deep snow, but if you just keep going downhill, you're going to eventually be in warm air eventually. And if you have to go all the way to the coast to get into like 65-degree air, which, for Southern Californians, that's like, oh, boy, I put on a parka at 65 degrees. But for Sasquatches coming out of the snow, that's just like, that's might as well be Miami.
Right.
So they'll come down and so it's a matter of figuring out where they go down to when the weather's bad. But when it's really hot, like right now, they're up at the top. They're up at the highest areas where the alpine flowers are still blooming.
Right.
And but anyway, that's been the interesting thing. That's characteristic of the Southwest, where you have high elevation alpine and then lower elevation desert. In New York, it's really a function of the deer and the harvests and and where the cornfields are. And it's really I understood it after a while as like kind of a big equation. And many years ago, I understood this equation. And so when I started doing the expeditions, I put all that understanding of the equations of what elements intersect to make an area that Sasquatch is probably going to be. And one layer of that is where there has been sighting reports before. With other people, that's the only layer. And that, to me, that's one of many layers. Because there might be sightings crossing a highway repeatedly, not every day, but repeatedly, and people might think, oh, well, that must be where they're around, not realizing, no, that's just the one place in the area where people are going to spot them, but the area where they'd be hanging around might be miles away, and people are spotting them across the highway just when they're transitioning from one mountain range to another, or one swamp. We're talking back east. It's like the things they really like in Western New York. They're you would look on a map, and there's actually like an interactive map system that maps different types of crops. So imagine like an interactive map where you can zoom down, and instead of seeing the different maps, will show you terrain, they'll show you aerial photos. Imagine one where it's just showing you mapping out where different types of crops, like corn, like where the cornfields are. So you overlay, the sightings, where the cornfields are, and then if there's power line routes, cuts going through, or abandoned railroad beds, or even active railroad beds, because in that part of the country, they'll follow those to go long distances.
Right.
And out west, they'll follow like ridge lines or rivers, et cetera, where there's open land. But back east, when you follow a river, you're going to run into a town. So if you want to stay away from people, you'll do like the deer, and you'll follow power line routes or railroad beds, et cetera. Or dirt roads that just dump, that avoid cities.
Oh my gosh.
So, it's a different equation there. But yeah, you can kind of figure it out. So then when I started doing expeditions, I applied that, and we got action. We would get these things to respond, and people would have sightings.
That's nice.
And with each time that we were successful with that, we're like, yeah, this methodology works. You really look at it as the food equation. And the protein equation, so to speak, like where you have different, because it isn't just deer. You mix in a marsh, then you have all these different, amphibious things they can eat: frogs, turtles, snakes, and you have some varying terrain, which, like, say, you have bluffs over a creek bed that allows you to get out of the wind. It gives you a view over a deer grazing area. And alfalfa fields is another thing. It's like number 2 behind cornfields for your part of the country. But yeah, you put all those ingredients, all the ingredients to look for, and you just figure out where those concentrations are, and you can get it narrowed down to like, a couple of miles radius, and then you get it to a high point in that area. And if there's a point in that area, a high point, from which if you made a loud howl, it would carry over a long area, and that's where you would go to do that.
Right.
And if your calculations were right, you're going to hear one respond. And if your calculations are really right, by the time when you get up toward that spot, there's already a Bigfoot up there doing that.
Right.
And that always impressed people. Like, this is where we got to go to howl, because this is where a Bigfoot would do it. We'd go up there, be almost there, and there's already a Bigfoot there howling, doing what I predicted would happen in that terrain. Right. And so anyway, so that I had a big following that wanted to go on every expedition I did, and it wasn't just to have an encounter to action, but just to see the method, to see the analysis of maps, the analysis of reports, like, okay, paying attention, what time of year are they, was it juvenile, was it more than one, what time of day, and just all these factors. And if you learn all these factors, you could just kind of figure out where the best spot is.
Right.
Or where a bit, again, you're not narrowing it down to a spot, you're narrowing it down to a place where sounds can project for a long way, such that if they're anywhere within a mile or 2 radius, then they're going to hear it. And if you make it close enough to the sounds they naturally do, then it's irresistible to them. Unless you've been to that same spot and done that thing already, because they get wise really fast.
Right.
Very
intelligent.
And if they hear their sounds, what's that?
I said they're very intelligent.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the things that's protecting people, because they have fur, they live in the woods, they don't build houses, and do engineering. People assume that they're just animals. That they have no more intelligence than any other one, and not realizing that they are. Let's put it this way: it'd be hard for you to get a picture of it, sense of it, until you've had an encounter with one about how smart they are, and how they will immediately impress you if you're standing right in front of one, that you're looking at there's a very intelligent being looking at you.
Yeah, well, you have to see.
And something that you find that you instantly care about too, because the sense that so many people, when they've had encounters, these things could kill you in an instant.
Right.
And you get the sense that when they have an encounter, that they feel afraid and vulnerable. And it gives you some empathy toward them, that they feel vulnerable, that they could be hurt, that they're not protected, and that they're being pursued.
Right.
And that and you feel like, oh man, that's like, you don't want to do that to them. But at the same time, there is a way of doing it where, there's a place, for example, in Washington State, where they did it the right way. And it wasn't a way I told them to do it, because the BFRO, when they do expeditions, once they learned the methodology, I said, you know what, from that point, then do it be creative. Try different things, do whatever. Let's see what you come up with.
Right.
And so people did things in different areas that were different than the way I would have done. But in Washington, they found a way to. There's a very special place in the Cascades where they were trying to be as friendly as possible to them and be entertaining and being just nice and sweet when these things would come around. And after a while, these things understood that. And so it was almost like fun for them coming around. And I would hear about this and go, oh, boy. Yeah, I was just like, yeah, come on. And then went up there, and of course, there was a lot of guys from California who had a lot of experiences. And then, there was various people that were skeptical. And then I went up and I said, no, they did it right. They made it work. These things are coming around, and these things are very curious. And it's like they're coming and watching a party that they know is for them. And they figured that out. And so then the guys from California who were, the most cynical, including Bobo, came up there, and Bart Cugino came up, and Bart had one crawling right, 30 feet from it, like the first sighting he had, with a thermal at fairly close range.
Right.
And he came back being like, wow, this place, everybody was impressed. So it's like when you learn those lessons, then of course you want to tell other people, yeah, try that. They're smart enough to figure out if you have bad intentions toward them or if you have friendly intentions where they know that you understand that they're not just an animal to be hunted, but they're almost like other people out there. Other people, and they're intelligent, and they're basically good, just like humans. Right. With exceptions, humans are basically good, have the best of intentions, and they're civilized in their way. And so this mutual respect develops. Civilized in that they could, I don't know how many times I've talked to like witnesses, parents have brought in their children. And or have reported to, so we've gone there, and we've talked to kids, like small girls, who were by themselves and had a full-grown Sasquatch standing right in front of them. And if it had been, of course, a mountain lion or even a bear, that would have been like end of story for the little girl. Yeah. And it wasn't. And, it would be, the girl would see like the shock and surprise in the Bigfoot, or the Bigfoot sometimes would approach. And in one case, it was very sweet. The Bigfoot came down and just, she was walking down a back driveway, and this has been like Georgia-Florida border. She's, very rural area. The houses are far apart. This kind of swampy southeast zone with big, there's actually pine trees. People don't realize that's a TV. Right. And it's just a lot of lights down there.
I have lots
She's
of
walking
questions.
back after dark from her friend's house. With that?
We have a ton of
questions that are coming in from the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, let's get to those then.
No, let's do a quick commercial first.
Really quick.
Yep, we'll do a quick commercial and then we'll come back. So nobody go anywhere. We'll be right back with Matt Moneymaker from the BFRO and Finding Bigfoot. Hang tight. We'll be right back. Digital Ink Art is a local company that specializes in screen printing, heat transfers, logos, vehicle graphics, and stickers. They are located in Albion, New York, between Rochester and Buffalo, and they make it real easy for anyone to get their brand printed. The website, digitalinkarts.com, is undergoing a new look, but you can still contact them on Facebook or by calling 585-200-2400. So don't forget, digitalinkarts.com.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has captivated you with their true reports of the strange and unknown. But things just got better. Join host Todd Bates Sunday nights 6/5 Central for Fate Radio. We bring you the best interviews, stories, and most of all, bring these true reports of the strange and unknown to life. Fate Radio with Todd Bates, Sunday nights 6/5 Central at FateMagRadio.com.
All right, everybody. We've been sitting here for almost 40 minutes talking with Mr. Matt Moneymaker. Sorry about that. And we've been talking about Bigfoot. We've been talking about basically the regions and everything. You guys have got a lot of questions here we need to get to. But before we get to your questions, I just want to mention a couple things. Well, actually, I want to talk to Matt about a couple things. I made some notes about some things. And Matt, I saw a video with John Green. I'm sure you know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he was talking about Bigfoot and basically some casts that were made apparently from 1958, which was before the Gimbling film. And he also mentioned that the whole thing with Bigfoot and actually proving that this creature exists, inevitably it's going to have to be a body. Science is going to want that, and rightly so. To prove the existence of this creature, they're saying that he said that's what has to happen. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I agree that that's what was originally thought,
Okay.
and believed, and it would be true if they got one, that would be the effect. But I don't think that's the only way. And when Jeff Meldrum came along, John Green was the godfather of this scene. I mean, the Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us, I read that when I was a kid, and that got me into it. And yeah, he was my hero. I mean, he was a newspaper guy, though. He wasn't a scientist. Jeff Meldrum came along and basically said, okay, listen, you don't necessarily need a whole body. You could have a piece of a body. And the coup de grace, all you'd have to do is literally have a tooth. But of course, to get a tooth, it's going to be part of like the remains of a carcass.
Right.
But the point is, it's just like, it doesn't have to be a whole body. It can be parts of one. It could, DNA that's at the follicle of a hair, especially if that comes from various places, would point to that. And of course, there's plenty of those out there, and that's not the problem. I have a hair sample myself. The problem is trying to find a lab with credentials and clout like Cornell, which would take, no amount of money that I had a sponsor offer. Blank freaking check, and they wouldn't do it.
Wow.
So the institutions that have the clout and have a reputation would not touch this subject with a 10-foot pole.
Now,
in China they might, in Russia they might, not in America.
Is that due to government?
No, it's never due to government. I mean, the thing with government is there's, of course, people in the government do know more. A lot of them have their own sightings. A lot of them have encounters. I mean, I've had sheriffs come and approach me in the Sierras and say that they've had incidents. And I'm like, so, I believe you, and I want to know about the area, but I want to know more about, like, what pressure you would feel to not talk about it. Because he said, we were up there filming a shoot, and he actually approached me, and he says, hey, you're Matt, right? And I was just like, am I in trouble? And he was just like, because two of these guys came up and back at me. And I'm like, you Matt? I said, yeah. And I'm like, and yes, he introduced himself. I says, I've seen one of these things. And he says, no doubt about it. It was in daytime. And I'm like, and these guys were in uniform. And I was just like, oh my, he wasn't lying.
Right.
And so I was just like, tell me, what is like, he says, of course we can't go on camera. I said, tell me why. I asked what I want to understand. Because what would apply to you would apply to other people in government agencies. And it's, people in, just like academics, people in government and government agencies have to maintain their credibility.
Right.
So if they had if they had a body, it would have to go through a chain. They'd get it out of their hands. But every government agency wants to avoid controversy. They want to avoid negative attention, even if it's unfair and unjustified.
Right.
If somebody in uniform says they've seen it, so it's not like a fatwa from the top that says, okay, we can't tell the public about Bigfoot. We can't do it. It's on an individual level, and it's a mix of what repercussions will happen for me as a government employee, and again, a lot of this applies to academics too. what would happen to me as a government employee? What would happen to my agency? Like, would they be bombarded with phone calls and like press, etc.? And they also have a protective attitude toward the animals. Like, what would happen to them? And it's kind of natural it's a natural, normal human thing. I've seen when people, good people, have encounters with these things, one of the natural things they conclude is, it's best that maybe people don't really know that they are there. Maybe it's best for these things, because if people knew, then they might go after them.
Well, you know why I asked, though.
Hurt them, they might,
Right, Matt? You know why I asked.
What?
About the government. Because people believe, and those are questions. People actually believe that the government is covering up the whole thing of the Bigfoot.
Oh, absolutely.
And we hear that. We hear that on a constant level, that the Bigfoot's associated with UFOs, which is covered up by the government, and blah blah blah. I mean, that's why I asked, because we have questions. In fact, we're going to be taking a couple callers that are going to ask you directly their question.
If they'll call
in. It's tough to, like, we know that you believe. We know what you've done over the years since 1995. But there are people out here in this world that, especially the United States, that have seen these or gotten a glimpse or seen the TV shows and so on and so forth. Not only do they recollect something, that maybe I saw this, but they're also being told or whispered in the ear, you don't want to say anything. And sometimes the belief comes from, hearsay. The government, they're covering it up. It's the UFOs. The aliens dropped them off here to babysit us. That type of thing.
Yeah.
But I know, but that's kind of simplistic, because, for example, with the UFOs, let's use that as an example. Yes, there is what you could call a cover-up over the years. But we're talking specifically military, where the members are, I don't know, I've never been in the military, but I know they are bound. They can't release things. They can't, there's strategic things. You can't just, like, in your military, talk about whatever you want that you heard. So military, there's a lot of secrecy around that. Other government agencies, there's not. Fish and Wildlife doesn't operate with, like, the same degree of strategic secrecy, except like maybe vis-a-vis poachers. So it depends, secrecy on the ability to control that stuff. It'd be easier in the military, and that's, of course, who had the footage of the UFOs.
Right.
So all they had to do is not release the footage. No one individually, they're not going to violate their secrecy of the military, but even if they did come forward, and they say this happened, they say some videotape, what the UFO, when that release came out, it would have meant nothing to the public, but for the fact that there was videos from military aircraft showing these things. And so that was the way they showed, okay, they're real, we know about it, here's footage that we haven't shown to anybody, And so without that, it would be like if you worked in the military and you decided, okay, I'm dying of cancer, terminally ill, I'm just going to step out and tell everybody, yeah, they're real, they're real. Nobody's going to take it. You've got to have something to show.
Right.
And so the footage is not like gotten with, the smartphone cameras of the fighter pilots. It's on, cameras that are on the plane, and they don't control that. They don't own that footage. So again, you can control the footage. That's how you can control the release. And same thing if, like, Fish and Wildlife had a body, or at some point it's like, or had, it can, like, their cars, say, had vehicles had, or their security cameras somewhere, and they got it. They can, somebody at the top can decide to hold on to that footage. And just by virtue of that, you can just, like, it'll be, quote, a cover-up. But no, it's just like, no, we're not releasing the footage. And why wouldn't you release the footage? And why did the government hold on for so long with UFOs? You don't, the case of the hairs from China at Ohio State, in a nutshell, some hairs were brought from China thought to be from a Yewang. They were going to be analyzed by Frank Poirier, Dr. Frank Poirier, who was an anthropologist. When word got out to the press that he had hairs from China that might have DNA proving that Bigfoot's, Yetis, and stuff are real, the phone in the Department of Anthropology wouldn't stop ringing. And reporters were coming to the front desk. And it became, this was in the 80s. And it became a huge hassle, such a burden for the department, because of the press attention, that he had to make an announcement to the press saying, we're dropping the study.
Wow.
We're not doing this. And we've decided to go get it. And I don't remember what explanation. I think he basically said is we can't handle this. It's too much. But so imagine that with the government. The government says they know that if they release it, then they have to be prepared to answer a lot of questions. And they have to have their package ready that has all the questions answered or the statements they're going to make ready so that, all of a sudden, they don't have the press asking the questions where they're thinking, let me think, how do we, So that's a glacially slow process of them deciding, okay, we're going to release it, and we know how to do it. So our cozy government jobs, we can breeze out of the office at 3:30, where that isn't going to change, where we can all, where it'll just kind of go into the mix, and it'll be smooth, and the press isn't going to be standing at our doorstep. And they did that. And when they released it, it was like, okay, there it is with the media, and there's the footage, and here's all the questions that they'd be hit with. They're already answered.
Right.
And so it may end up being that way with Bigfoots too at some point. They say, you know what, we really think these things are real. And we have every reason to believe that they're not harmful. Nobody's got to worry about it. And there's we don't have any reason to believe they've ever attacked or killed someone. The disappearances that have been supposedly attached to them, that's just speculation. And people do disappear in the woods for other reasons other than Bigfoot. So they might step forward, because who would have expected? Would you, like 5 years ago, would you have expected that the government, after all this time, knowing that these are military bases, they had encounters or they had footage of these weird objects? Everybody talked about that for a long time. Would you have thought 5 years ago, after all this time, that they were finally going to come forward and say, you know what, they're real? We admit it. These things from outer space, we don't know what they are. And luckily they had footage from a pilot where he's watching it and they're following it. And it doesn't inspire a heck of a lot of panic because the guy's watching going, whoa, that thing, oh, check it out, which is just like expressing this kind of fascination with it, not fear of it, not terror, like, oh my God, they're coming, the war of the world. And that's really the proper emotion with all that stuff. Right. Like UFOs, you should appreciate it. Like, wow, it's really real. That's great. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Bigfoots. Same thing with ghosts. These things are they're not just benign in a lot of ways. Which I don't get into detail. They're benevolent in various ways. But that's a whole other story. And we can probably go to another question because we spent a lot of time on that one.
We're going to need another hour and a half for this show.
Well, I have a couple questions that I just want to ask really quickly because it's going back a ways now. They wanted to know if their diet, are they omnivores, are they herbivores, are they just solely carnivores? They wanted to know that. They also wanted to know, have there been interbreeding with humans?
That's been a question that I heard on several, when I was watching videos on YouTube with other people being interviewed about Bigfoot. That was actually one of the questions that was brought up several times. Believe it or not.
Okay, so we got two questions there. Have they ever interbred with humans? Mm-hmm. Do I think they've ever interbred with humans? And then the first one was
food. Like what do they eat?
Food. Okay. Okay. Food, omnivorous, but it's like you can say that level. It's so much more nuanced than just saying, oh, omnivorous. But bears are omnivorous. Humans are omnivorous.
Right.
Bears are omnivorous in a very different way than humans. But say their diet of Sasquatches would be most like, say, pre-farming, pre-Neolithic hunter-gatherer humans in temperate environments. So which is different than tropical, and it's and even you're talking about going back so long that it's just that by the time humans got into temperate environments, they already had things like spears and dogs and things like that. So already they would have been doing it differently. But in terms of the diet, it's anything they can eat, especially the proteins being the most important things, carbohydrates being the next. You need carbohydrates to keep you warm. You need proteins to grow and make everything function. And so the biggest score, and then of course there's fats, lipids, The biggest score of that stuff is you get such a score out of animal meat, and for them, they don't have cattle. They'd be going after like elk, deer, and pigs. That'd be the primary thing. But the young, and of course they hunt those down. And the liver of the deer, it's a very oily organ, and there's other oily organs, and they like that stuff. So it's going after that type of protein defines where they go. And where there's a combination of that and with other plant life, and I mean things down even like polywogs or insects, where a lot of those things are in combination. Young ones, for example, will very often, when they're very young, they'll be around swampy zones, marshes, because you can run around in that all day long and pick little things out of the mud or off the branches that are edible, insects and everything else. I mean, frogs, if nothing else.
Right.
So a young one can stay put near a marsh, and whereas bigger ones or ones that maybe don't have young yet, can range out very far and go from marsh to marsh, and they're going after deer. So in the process of going after deer, they are also foraging on plant life. And all of that is very much the way, Stone Age man operated. It was like you'd be omnivorous, you'd go after whatever things that you could gather, but what defined your lifestyle was following the herd. And then and which required that you're not in the same place forever. That only happened once there was farming. And of course there's exceptions. There's places like in the Northwest where the natives, where you could have a tribe that would be parked at a river mouth that can continually provide, flows of fish and things like that. But generally you're having to move. To go, because the deer don't stay put, especially when there's predators around. Right. So they're omnivorous with an emphasis on big game.
Right.
And the second question, have they ever interbred with humans? I think that idea was floating around for a while because of Zana.
Yeah.
Because of what?
Zana, I forgot about that. She apparently was a child of a Bigfoot and a human. That's what they were saying, and they were trying to find DNA or something. I can't remember the whole story, but it is on YouTube. There is a story about it where she was supposedly a child of the two. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And it was because she had a different look in her face, and she was supposedly very strong, stronger than the other kids. They did DNA eventually from, I think it was from her remains or from something, and she was part African.
Right.
She was part black.
Yeah.
And she was in a part of the Soviet Union where there's nobody else like that. And I don't remember what the story was, is how somebody would be, how somebody of black ancestry would be up there, but she was part black. So she looked so different, and she would have had darker skin, and conceivably she could have been, might have been a little stronger than the other kids. Or growing up, but yeah. So Zana is not a part Bigfoot. Zana was in just a part of Asia where she would have been an anomaly,
right?
And for being part African, and it is. I mean, if you know about these things, it is absolutely genetically impossible for these things to interbreed with a human. It'd be literally like the potential for an orangutan breeding with a human. And that's the definition of a species. One of the definitions is its ability to interbreed or not interbreed. So orangutan, being a totally different species than a human, there's no way that they could. The genes, there wouldn't be a viable baby. You got to have something kind of genes kind of close to intersect.
But I would
think the interbreeding.
I would think that with an orangutan, our DNA would be a little further away from their DNA, so it wouldn't make it viable. But with a...
Why do you think that? Why do you think?
I think that because there are things that...
orangutan DNA would be different.
I think that it would be different because the way they sit, the way they walk, the way they do things, I think that it would just be a little further away than say
a chimpanzee.
A chimpanzee. Well, even a Sasquatch. I think it would.
Oh, but you're being so superficial. No, if orangutan had
Listen, I'm
evolved
just not pretty, honey.
upright,
I'm totally superficial. No, but I'm.
Let's assume orangutan would grow parallel. Let's say they grew upright. They, had a large brain. They started looking a lot more human-like at the process of evolution. That because they would have like limb ratios that are more close to the upright and various things. That wouldn't mean their DNA would then more easily blend with humans. It's a matter of ancestry.
Right.
I understand that. I was I was just trying to get to the point of that no matter what monkey species, they're a lot closer to us than, say, a cat. It's been genetically proven. What I'm saying, though, is I think that between an orangutan and the Sasquatch, ours may be closer than the orangutan. That's what I said.
Oh, that's
simplified.
Yeah. Oh, so you're
Okay.
just believing the species a little closer.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand, and that's why I wondered why. And I think your reason was because the appearance and things that you hear the Sasquatches do seem so much more similar than it would seem that so much more similar than, say, an orangutan, that therefore their DNA would be closer to a human because they seem more. There's a lot of things that match up with humans. And what I'm saying is that's parallel evolution. I think these things came out of Southeast Asia.
Now listen, you need to take that superficial comment away now.
Okay, I'm taking that superficial. But it's not superficial. But I understand. I mean, it's logical. It's totally normal to make sense about it. And I think
that's awesome.
It's wrong to say superficial because from my perspective, it seems that way because I have a pretty good idea of where they are from. Right. And that they would have branched off the family, our ancestors, a long, long time ago. Like even before chimpanzees divided. I mean, these are Asian. These were monkeys with tails. Right. This would have been an ape species, but one of very, very, very ancient one that when the continents were still connected, that split off and then became the line of Asian apes in Southeast Asia. So orangutans are very, very different than African apes, and than chimpanzees and gorillas, being on different continents, separated so much earlier. And so whatever comes out of Southeast Asia, no matter where it goes, is such an ancient connection to our ancestors that it wouldn't work genetically.
Right.
But you wouldn't know. I mean, you'd have to know that whole lineage, or at least believe that that is what their lineage. Otherwise, it would be logical that they might be closer.
Right, and we definitely have to have more. I mean, you have the knowledge that we don't have with this stuff, and you've done the research more from what where we stand. Mm-hmm. We're ghost hunters. We're researchers of the things that we sit and talk to in the middle of the night with furniture and stuff. So we're not tracking these things down. So like you are, but Matt, we have to say that it's.
I do have one more quick question I have from Brian Sasquatch Jeffrey, because he's been asking what's up with the new show. That's the whole reason he's in here. It's been a couple times that he's asked. So
he wants to know about the new show.
What's up with the new show is that in the process of development, I've been adding elements to it, bringing it to contact TV people, getting their feedback. When I finally get it to TV channels, I want more than one to want it. I don't want it just to be accepted by one.
Right.
I want more than one even bidding for it. So to build it to that strength, it was only a couple weeks ago that I realized it was where it was vulnerable, that it needed another character. And I wanted to avoid 4 characters so people wouldn't compare it to finding Bigfoot. But there is now a 4th character added. And we've been doing calls with him last week, and he's a great character. He was a witness in one of the episodes. And I don't want to say character. He's a ghost investigator, among other things.
Wow.
And so this show is going to be looking into various things, Bigfoots, UFOs, anything that happens on reservation. And people only know these categories, Bigfoots, UFOs, and ghosts, and there's more than that, more categories.
Wow.
And it's just astounding. I mean, little people. It's like, I really do think this is a type of an undiscovered, species much closely related to humans. I mean,
Right.
they're like and they might actually be a separate species of humans, but like they wear clothes, or they make themselves from buckskin, and they look like basically like pygmy Eskimos. But yeah, those are real, and so we're going to check out a lot of those things. It
Cool.
was delayed, like I said. I don't want to say it's delayed. It has been cooking so that it's going to be a very powerful show and the best one I ever did. I'm still saying it's probably going to start airing next year. But it was good that we're building it up to the point that when its first channels are first looking at it, that they're all going to want it, or several of them, rather than just going, I don't know, yeah, maybe we'll take a chance.
Okay.
I don't want to be in that position. I want to be in one with like everybody realizes this is going to be a huge hit, and we all want it.
When does it air? Do you know that yet?
No, next year I'm predicting.
So he's
Okay.
predicting 2019.
So yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. It takes that long.
Probably
yeah,
the
so
fall.
It'll right, and of course you understand. Even right now, even though Finding Bigfoot is over, I am still under contract with Animal Planet.
Right.
So I couldn't have started the production of this other series a year ago, such that it would be ready for TV right now, which is what everybody wants. Finding Bigfoot's over. Please give us our next series.
Please just tell me that you
which
don't
is
have Zach
exciting.
Baggins with you.
Excuse me?
Please tell me you don't have Zach Baggins with you.
No. There's a character of two native women. Although I like that you don't like Zach Baggins. I think the guy's really sincere about it. But I mean, I'm not.
He's
I
just
don't
a
know
little
if I
overly
ghost hunter
dramatic.
Politics.
He's just overly dramatic for my taste.
Wow, that's amazing, because I kind of thought that at first, but it seems like every lady loved him.
No.
Not this lady.
No.
I'm not that superficial.
No, there's actually a lot of people that really don't care
It's-
for him, to be
right,
honest with you.
in the ghost
in the ghost-
hunting industry.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, Matt,
Yes,
you know,
we do have.
we have to cut you off, Matt, and we have to have you come
sorry.
back. We have to
Yes,
spend
we do.
2 hours with you because
we have to do two.
these people are just blowing up the phones
They
and the
are.
chat rooms. I mean, we would
How
love.
many people? How many people are trying to?
I have. Oh, sorry, Ted.
She's kicking me.
I have. I'm trying to play footsie with him under the table, people. It's not working. I got his knee.
Right now between Periscope
I have-
and Facebook Live, and I mean right now we're at a dead spot, but
Yeah, I had up to 18, 20 people, I believe, at one point.
at one point
I'm at 14
asking
right now.
questions,
asking
but you're
questions.
talking just live video. You're not talking audio or anything else. So you're probably
Bill
getting
said 1,400 people.
about 1,400 people. So you know it's pretty good. You know, about 1,400 people asking questions and viewing the live video part of this.
Right,
so.
just the live part, because we haven't even gone. I mean,
Yeah.
once we stop it
and edit and do everything, we catch another 1,000 to 2,000 people as well. So, you know, we do all right in this avenue. We are the only paranormal show in upstate New York, and actually New York, as far as I know, and in this area. So we're actually pretty popular there, and we're the first.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
So we would love to have you back.
Yes, please come back.
Yes, we would love to have you back.
I absolutely will.
All right, all right. Well,
Fantastic.
thank you so much. I didn't even get to my questions, and you know, I had some more, and
I know.
I just
Well, we have
The way we'll do it
Andrea.
next time is instead of I won't give long-winded explanations. Try to do the answers quick, like yes, no, omnivorous, can't breed with humans. What's the next one?
well, we just hate
awesome.
interrupting. I mean, we get yelled at for interrupting because people don't realize the delay, and you know, there's just so many questions I have, and we've had Steve on the show a few times. We've had Cliff. We've had Bobo. I've even had Big Vinny from the Nashville band. Shoot, now I go. Geez, now I can't even think of the name of them. Oh, Trailer Choir, and he actually wants to go out and sit down and have a beer with Bigfoot. So, you know, we've
Nice.
had him on the show too. So there's. You know, there's a lot. I mean, it's just a lot we have to discuss. So I will get a hold of you again, and we'll plan something, and we'll dedicate the show to you
my
for 2 hours.
Is am I going to be able to tweet a link that's going to go to a page where people can hear this report?
Certainly. I'm going to be sending it. Yes, I'm going to be sending it to you. We'll edit. We'll do the video as well as. I'll send you whatever I've got at that point.
And the video part too. Yeah.
And it's always on YouTube. Everything is put on YouTube pages as well. We have our own YouTube called Paratalk Radio, and everything goes there.
Yes, and if you want to have some, so they can a link, send us your link as well, and we'll put that on our page.
You have. They can contact. Do you have a link that they can contact you on if they have more questions?
What we do is the BFRO takes in reports.
It takes in reports, okay.
A lot of people have tons of questions. We have tons of information out there. Most questions people have are questions people have asked before. So I would just give a link to the BFRO site and then just go through the FAQ.
Okay, all right.
And that probably hits most of the questions.
All right. They can do that.
Otherwise, we have a report form for adding reports. So BFRO.net.
Okay, and if they want, they can write down their questions and get them to me, and I can even just we'll make the plan for Matt to come back, and we'll go from there. So
awesome.
Save your questions, folks, and we'll definitely come back with Matt. We'll have him back on the show, and it'll go from there. Thank you again, Matt, so much for joining us here at Paratalk Radio. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You are very welcome, and we will hook it up again.
All right, sounds
great.
good. All right, thanks, Matt.
Take care.
All right, I believe Andrea Perron is on the phone. We're going to come back with her shortly right after a commercial.
Flashlight Recorder and Comfortable Shoes, a simple guide to paranormal investigation. Written by Keith Spratley and Ted Van Son. If you're looking to join the living who research the paranormal or the unknown, this book will guide you into developing your techniques. Reverend Tim Shaw says, the work will guide you along your journey to seek the truth about life after death. Available at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And you can find a direct link on paratalkradio.com. Get your copy today.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has captivated you with their true reports of the strange and unknown. But things just got better. Join host Todd Bates Sunday nights 6/5 Central for Fate Radio. We bring you the best interviews, stories, and most of all, bring these true reports of the strange and unknown to life. Fate Radio with Todd Bates Sunday nights 6/5 Central at fatemagradio.com.
All right, we are back here. Guys, thank you so much for sitting in for the first hour and 10 minutes, and I feel so bad because... Andrea, are you on the phone?
I am. I'm right.
Oh, hi, honey.
Andrea. I see 407. That's AZ, right?
Yes.
There is a little bit of a delay between us, about 3 to 4 seconds, just so you're aware. If you hear us, I'm sorry. We're not trying to interrupt it just because of that delay.
Yes, don't worry about that at all. I'm used to it.
Perfect.
So I'm going to start this out real quick by saying we have Miss Andrea Perron on the show.
Florida.
And she has got a series of books out called House of Darkness, House of Light.
Cool.
And it's basically about her experiences in Rhode Island at... Harrisonville, I believe, is the town. Or Harrisville, sorry.
Harrisville.
Yep, Harrisville, Rhode Island. And 10 years her family went through the whole incident, which is the real Conjuring story, not just the movie.
Nope.
You guys have and I have to tell you, Cindy,
I have goosebumps all over my body
last
already.
night, I messaged Andrea and I said, I listened to you when I went to bed last night. I watched probably 10 or 12 videos, tried to stay awake, and just kept watching them over and over and over. And at some point, I fell asleep and came back up with some stupid thing playing on my
phone. Yes, because they just keep cycling through.
And she's like, oh, was it good that I put you to sleep? And I'm like, I don't know. So
yes, it's good.
Well, people often tell me that I have a very soothing voice.
Well,
I
and
like
that
it.
It makes them feel kind of woozy. So,
Better
I
to
guess,
talk somebody to
perhaps
bed,
that's
my
to be
dear.
expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, it's
Well,
it's a good thing though.
Yo,
it is because
it's-
even if you're unconscious, you're taking stuff in.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's perfectly fine.
Well, I when I got to the studio here, I was like, am I going to remember everything? Because there's so much that when we interviewed the first time that we didn't get to go over, and you missed it, Cindy, because you didn't know. But I had tried friending Andrea last year, and she actually had to dump a cousin or something to get me as a friend.
Oh my God, that's awesome, right? Because sometimes they have quotas, and you have to.
Yeah, and it's so great that I feel bad for her cousin, but
Jeez,
sorry.
you're so funny.
I know.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to go back a little bit. Sorry, I dropped my pen. I want to go
that's
back
what
a little
he
bit
says
and
he's
just
doing.
cover briefly, because people have seen the movie. I mean, the movie came out in 2013.
I believe so.
And they've watched the movie, and they can Google pretty much anything. And YouTube has, an amazing amount of literature or video on it, I should say. And your books are just amazing from what I understand. I have not read them. I want to read them. I still have not gotten to purchase them yet, but I want to.
We have so many things on our
There's
list.
so much going on with us.
Oh my gosh, we have so many
And-
things on our list to purchase, so we have to.
I know.
We sometimes have to.
I know, and
Put it in order.
We still haven't even raised enough money for a werewolf baby.
I know, people. We need a werewolf baby.
But and we have some very big events for Paratalk Radio for the first time ever. We've advanced ourselves to a level of actually moving forward in a good speed to where more people are getting to listen, to understand our point of views with some of the stuff within the paranormal, which is great. Like Scarefest this year, we're going to be there. We're going to be at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash this year. We just became the Ghost Hunters Day. Actually, it's the world's largest ghost hunt. We are going to be their radio station for that night. So, I mean, there's so much going on for us that we actually have a hard time keeping up with certain things. But enough about that. Andrea, why don't you take us back to you guys
nice.
moving into the farmhouse? Why don't we start there?
I will tell people as a little preamble that I do have 2 YouTube channels, Andrea Perron YouTube and House of Darkness, House of Light. And they are interactive, so you can basically, if something's loaded on one, it goes automatically to the other.
Oh, nice.
So, as you know, there's a ton of material out there, most of which I produced. And I did that because The Conjuring really barely scratches the surface of our story. It would have been impossible for them to compress 10 years into 2 hours.
Right.
So they basically cherry-picked a little of our story and a very little. There isn't a single scene in The Conjuring that comes directly from my books, not one. They did not reference, they referenced, but they did not use any of the material in my books. Not only because I contractually had them tied up pretty tightly, but also because they were afraid to tell the real true story. What's in those books makes The Conjuring pale in comparison.
I'm going to interrupt you.
They were afraid that it would.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you.
Pardon?
I said I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because I really understand what you're saying, that some of it is scary beyond belief from what I understand and what you're conveying to us. But with the amount of stories and horror flicks that we see, I am actually kind of disappointed that they wouldn't run some of the facts
Yeah,
on
right.
that. And I'm hoping that not, because I heard that you were going to be creating a movie or a series of your own about the book and what actually happened. I hope that's
Yes.
true.
Yeah, I had a coast-to-coast meeting with my producers today.
Awesome.
And we're moving forward, and it's going to be a series of films. It will be at a very minimum 3, and it might be more. It depends on the production staff that I get, how we lay it out, how we storyboard it. I think you're familiar enough with that end of the business to know that these things do not happen overnight.
No,
Right.
I don't.
I have been working on the screenplays for the better part of 2 years, in between writing an entirely new book and publishing my last book, which is in a flicker that I wrote about, of all things, Jack the Ripper. It was a
cool.
radical departure for me.
So,
Yeah, it was a radical departure. In a flicker, anybody that out there listening that's an aficionado of Jack the Ripper and wants to be terrified out of their minds and think differently about everything after they're done reading a book,
no, that's
please
awesome.
avail yourself of In a Flicker. And you can
Okay.
check it out at inaflickernovel.com. It's a brilliant idea, and I say that with all humility because it's not my idea. I would never have come up with that in a billion years. But George Lopez, my co-author, is actually the one in whose really dark, twisted mind that this
Dark and
story
twisty.
originated.
Wow.
And
Nice.
he is an evil genius. He is.
We
and
love
it
dark
is
and
a story
twisty.
unlike anything. I mean, honest to God, yeah, I want you to read the trilogy, and that's great. But if you want to be blown out of your chair, read In a Flicker. It's gotten almost exclusively 5-star reviews from all around the world. I'm very proud of it. And, you know, I when I talk about it, I tell people, you know, from the depths of its darkness comes the enlightenment, the understanding of man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah.
And I think that and that's the purpose that it serves. You know, the reason that I got involved with that, and I know I've gone off topic, I will go back, I know where we were going.
You're fine, because that happens to us all the time.
Well, I'm very, very proud of this because, and the reason that I got involved with it was because after I finished the trilogy, I went into the strange kind of almost like postpartum depression. Like I had fulfilled my purpose on Earth, telling our story of the 10 years we lived at the farm, that I had done that the truth was out there, regardless of what, you know, anybody that saw The Conjuring and wanted to know more, it was there for them to know. So I felt like in some ways, you know, I was floundering. What do I do next? What do I do? Am I going to just, you know, go to paranormal conferences and sell my books for the rest of my life? I don't think so.
Right.
You know, there's so much more. I mean, I work in ufology. That's my real love. That's the newest book that I'm getting ready to publish now.
Right.
You know, I'm an ongoing preacher. So, but anyway, I took a little bit of a detour. George called one night just to check on me because he knew I was in a dark place. You know, I was just in a low spot in my life. And no reason to be. No reason. I mean, everything was going so well. You know, and the movie was a huge success and yada, yada.
Yeah.
And there was no reason for me to feel depressed. And so he called me. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And he's like, let me tell you a story, like a bedtime story. Well, honest to God, it curled my hair. It took him 2 hours. I had to go through 3 handsets of phones. I'm running through the house trying to find another one that's charged up so that I don't miss a word of this. And when it was done and I was wiping the tears away from my face, I'm like, good God, George, you have got to write this down. And he said, I'm a thinker, not a writer. And I said, I'm a writer. I'll write it down for you.
That's amazing.
And the reason that I got involved with it is because You know, if you walk up to anybody on the street and ask them if they've ever heard of Jack the Ripper, you know what the answer is going to be. He is infamous worldwide. His crimes are infamous worldwide. Anybody who knows anything, if they know their own name, they've heard of Jack the Ripper.
Right.
If you ask that same individual if they know any of the names of his victims, you get nothing but deer in the headlights.
Right.
And I can tell you that when you're done reading this book, you'll know all of these women intimately and why they lived the way they did and precisely how they died.
That's awesome.
And I got to tell you, because we, for us, it's also, believe it or not, Jack the Ripper is one of ours.
We love him.
Yeah, we want to, actually, we were invited to go over to London from a friend of ours, Jason Whitnell, to go over there, and he was going to show us the whole thing.
Show us around
for Jack the Ripper, because we actually want to go into it ourselves. And I think that's amazing. So unfortunately, there's another book we got to add to our collection of to buy.
Yeah. Read it first. You can always read the trilogy later, and you know me personally, so if you have a question about what happened at the farm, I can always just tell you. Just call me. You know, it's not that. I think Flickr will blow your mind.
Damn,
absolutely blow your mind. And I think in some ways, in terms of, you know, what you do in your own research and everything, it will expand your consciousness in terms of what you're doing with your research and your investigations and everything, because it really is, not only is it the ultimate murder mystery, but it is it's a very honest, forthright treatment. The very worst of it is derived directly from the annals of English history, right from the medical reports, the coroner's reports, the examiner, the research that went into it. It's amazing, but it's an interesting conflagration between real characters and fictional characters, and it's very scientifically based, and it involves the Large Hadron Collider at CERN in Switzerland. So I can't tell you too much more than that, because it's the kind of book where if you tell somebody anything, you're going to spoil something.
Right.
You know, it really is. It's not that I'm trying to be vague or obtuse. I just can't tell you a lot without spoiling something for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that, and then I'll move on to the farmhouse.
Okay, so I do...
Say that again, honey?
I said, yes, leave us hanging on the edge, wanting more. Yes.
But what were you going to say? You were going to say something else.
So I have a couple things that have been asked. One was, were you paid for the rights regarding The Conjuring? Also, we're being asked if Ted and I can have cameos in your movies. That's literally in here.
Yes and no.
There you go, Phil.
Yeah, because you would not. I mean, these people have got the weirdest sense of humor sometimes, and they do. You know, they ask the questions that just sometimes you don't expect. And
Phil is trying to get us famous, though.
Is that what he's trying to do?
He wants to get us famous. Yes.
I don't want to be famous. No. All right, let's get back into this. So let's start with when you guys moved in and go right from there, because I would love to get as much of this in our program as we can, and then towards the end do some questions.
How about if we do our commercial really quick?
Well, we can. I mean, why don't we do the quick commercial, and then we'll start in, and we'll give her as much time as she's wanted at this point, and not even no more commercials, no more breaks. Yeah. Is that okay with you, Andrea?
That's fine.
All right, one more commercial. We'll be right back. Digital Ink Art is a local company that specializes in screen printing, heat transfers, logos, vehicle graphics, and stickers. They are located in Albion, New York, between Rochester and Buffalo, and they make it real easy for anyone to get their brand printed. The website, digitalinkarts.com, is undergoing a new look, but you can still contact them on Facebook or by calling 585-200-2400. So don't forget, digitalinkarts.com.
God. Phil, you are cracking me up tonight. You and Robert, of course.
And Robert's over in
Australia. Yes.
Yeah, so that's where we're reaching tonight, Andrea, just so you know.
Yeah.
All the way over there.
Are you there, Andrea?
Did we lose you?
Andrea? Hello?
Hello?
We shouldn't have done a commercial break.
I think we lost her. Well,
No, I'm right here.
Oh, jeez. You scared us.
Sorry, I was talking to my dad. I thought it would be a little longer.
No, you're all right.
That's okay.
That's okay. But
Hi,
anyways,
Dad. Hi,
yeah.
Andrea's dad.
We were basically telling you that some of our viewers, or some of our viewers actually, because this was the Facebook Live app, that we're reaching for you all the way over to Australia tonight. We're reaching all over the place tonight for you.
My God, Phil, you're cracking me up.
Oh, cool. I have a lot of followers out of Australia and New Zealand for some reason. I guess just because they're English speaking and everything I've written's in English, and I haven't had it
we
translated into other languages.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of fans from there, and we find it interesting as well. Is that we have such a huge following over there. It's cool.
We love you guys.
Yeah, they're really, really into the paranormal, and they're really smart about it. I guess is the best way to put it. They're very much into the scientific aspects of it. At least that's been my experience with the people that I've interacted with.
And their humor is amazing.
And really, and very fascinated, truly fascinated. And they have plenty of haunted places over there too. So, it's not like they have a shortage. Okay, so where do you want to?
Well, basically, I wanted to kind of bring the first thing. The first thing that got me was when you first started telling the story live, was where you were saying that when you guys first got there to move into the place, you were talking about your father handing you a box and then walking into the house with a box, and you had to walk through the first door, and you had to walk through all the house to get to where your mother was, and you saw somebody standing in the room.
That happened within 5 minutes. It was January 1971. We had bought the house in 1970, but my parents closed on it in December, and my mom didn't want us to move right at Christmas.
Right.
So we waited until the beginning of the new year and after Christmas vacation, so that we could start the second half of the school year in our new school. So she was very pragmatic about it, as anxious as she was to move in. We had visited the house a number of times as a family before we actually moved in, because my mom found the house in June of 1970, and we got to know the owner, Mr. Kenyon. And the day that we moved in, he took my father for a little stroll out in the middle of a snowstorm. And at that point, he said to my dad, in a rather cryptic way, Roger, for the sake of your family, leave the lights on at night. And my father, ghosts and spirits weren't even on the radar. That wasn't anything that wasn't in our consciousness as a family. My mother wanted the house because it was one of the original colonial homes left in Rhode Island and in America. The land was deeded for it in 1680, and the house was completed in 1736.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
It's, a really old place, and she was just enthralled with the history and just the natural beauty of the place. It was 200 acres. It was an amazing piece of property, and we loved it. And we went a number of times to visit Mr. Kenyon and to visit the farm and kind of get acclimated to it, and the adults could talk about all the sale and the business arrangement ends of things, but we ran around like banshees all over that property, in and out of the house and in and out of the barn, and none of us had any recollection of seeing anything strange or in any way odd. But the day that we moved in, it's almost like they waited, It's like they waited until the papers were signed and there was no way out before they decided to manifest. And
Jesus, that's scary.
moment that I walked into the dining room with a box, I was heading for the kitchen. I said good morning to Mr. Kenyon, who was standing in the dining room packing the last of his belongings. And then as I walked through the foyer, there was a man standing at the entrance to the foyer that I had to walk right past. And I said good morning to him, and he didn't respond to me. In fact, he looked right through me. And he was dressed in a very odd manner, nothing I had ever seen before in terms of clothing or style. And I went into the kitchen and I asked my mom who the man was that was with Mr. Kenyon. And she said, there's nobody with Mr. Kenyon. His son's on the way, but he's not here yet. And I said, but, you know, there's, you know, and, you know, it wasn't her fault that she didn't go check. It was bedlam and chaos, and the moving guys were bringing stuff in the kitchen door, and people were bringing stuff in the parlor door, and it was just, there was so much activity.
Right.
And then Christine came in the kitchen with her box off the back of the truck because Dad was handing the boxes out to the 4 eldest of us that could handle that. April was in the kitchen with Mom. And Cindy came into the kitchen. Christine did, and she's like, Mom, that man that's wearing the funny clothes, you know, who is he? And she's like, oh, I don't know who you're talking about. And we just, you know, kept on going. And then Cindy walked in, and she asked who the man was with Mr. Kenyon. And then Nancy walked in and leaned over to Cindy, and she said, did you see that man that was with Mr. Kenyon? I did, and he just disappeared. And that was our introduction to the supernatural realm.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and to say that you guys had never had any type of connection or experience of any type of ghostly activity prior to this. So, you know...
No, it's not something we brought with us, that's for sure. And, you know, it took a long time before we started to really get to know people in the area. But it didn't take that long for us to figure out not only what was going on in the house, but that many, many people in the area knew it. That house had a reputation that nobody informed us of before my mother and father made the purchase of their lifetime. I mean, it took everything that they had to buy this estate. And it was because my mom wanted to raise her kids in the country.
Right.
And, you know, there were some bad things that were happening in our hometown of Cumberland, Rhode Island. And it was just compiling. It was just a real issue for her. And she started looking, and it turned out that we were meant to have that place. It wasn't until 5 months after she found it that she was informed at the closing from the real estate agent that she called the first day that they had listed the property, and they had a 6-month listing on it. Hers was the one and only call that ever came in for that house.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, so it was kind of like meant to be.
And it was on the first day. Yeah, it was the first day that they had advertised it. And she was the one and only call.
And what amazes me is that with a house with a history, I mean, I'm just going to kind of throw this out there real quick. Right? It is like we have the haunted Hinsdale house here in New York. And that place has always had history. It's always had some stories, you know what I mean? There's always been something said about it before, you know, somebody else came in and told their story about the house. So that's where I was going with this, was with you, is like, before you guys moved in, I'm sure there had to be other stories, and people had to know that the place was haunted, or there was some, you know, tragedies or so on and so forth in that area. I mean, neighbors had to know, and
hence the no people inquiring about the house.
I mean, because we know, like in New York, it's now a law. They have to tell you if the place is noted for being haunted.
Well, think about it this way. I mean, that was back in 1971. That's when I was born.
Yeah, because you're so young.
Yeah, those were things that was a very, very much a taboo subject.
Right.
Back then. You know, as we were little kids and experiencing these things and telling our friends that, you know, our new friends at school, things that were happening in the house, and then they, you know, people would come over and have things happen to them. And And it was, word got around really fast, and the principal of the high school pulled me into his office one day and said, if I get one more phone call from a parent distressed about what their child is going home and telling them, I'm going to have you expelled.
Wait,
Don't say another word about your so-called haunted house.
Right, because for a child...
And I was a straight A student, my visions of college were already dancing like sugar plum fairies in my head, and I had never been called to the principal's office for anything in my entire life at that point.
Right.
I was absolutely mortified that he called me a liar.
Right.
I couldn't, he was physically threatening to me, put me up against a wall. I was terrified, and I shut my mouth.
Right.
I didn't say anything to anybody for years and years and years. We kept it right in the family.
Right. Well, I recognize that because I was in school in the 70s, and, that's the way it was. The whole feeling back then was very taboo to talk about ghosts or anything like that. And, if I remember high school to where if you said something that somebody else didn't agree with, the principal or guidance counselor would pull you in and they would just jack you up against the wall. And they were able to do that without calling home, and they couldn't be arrested for any of that stuff. But today you can't even pluck a hair out of somebody without getting, child welfare services on
I was going to tell her that, thank God I wasn't her mom, because
if I had been this age now when he tried something like that on me, I would have flattened him.
Yeah.
Right, and that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, you're not going to call my child a liar and get away with it.
Well, back then it was acceptable to be that way.
I remember. We used to, teachers used to be able to hit kids.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it that way.
Think about rulers. Do you know how many times I got hit by a ruler or a yardstick? But, back then in the 70s with the hauntings and now we have to make something clear, because I have been watching the videos, and I have been, doing my research on this. And yes, you and I are friends, Andrea, and I wanted to dig in to find out what was, what I was missing in some of this. And I think because of the movie, people are assuming that Bathsheba was the biggest evil entity in the world when it came to that house. And what I believe is that there was more than just her there, and she was not the only one that was tormenting everything that was, the people that were living in that house. There was other spirit as well.
Oh, you just did that, and all of a sudden it took me to the house. I'm freaking out right now. Because they're telling me that you were talking about Bathsheba or something.
Bathsheba, yeah.
But they're telling me she also was protecting them. So I haven't read your books, I'm sorry. And for The Conjuring, I saw it one time, so I'm just not doing well with horror movies these days. Mm-hmm. But literally, they're talking to me as you're talking about this.
Right.
So I have other entities that are saying that they were trying to protect you guys, Andrea. Are you aware of that?
There were entities in the house. There were spirits in the house. One man. At least one man,
I definitely have a
two, and one woman for sure. That was very benevolent, very loving, and very protective of us.
Okay, did you?
In fact, my sisters.
I'm sorry. I was just.
I'm sorry. What?
I was just saying. Did you say that one of them had military clothes on? Because I keep seeing military clothes on the gentleman. Okay, the gentleman has military clothes on.
Yeah, we had, one of the first things that happened was that my little sister Cindy, who was only, I think, 7 or 8, she had turned 8 when we moved to the farm. Just before we moved to the farm, in fact, she came to my room within a night or two of us moving into the house. I don't remember if it was the very first night, but within the first few days, she came crawling into bed with me, and she was very afraid.
He's
and I
literally
asked
telling
her
me
what
he
the
liked
problem
her.
was.
He's telling me he liked your sister Cindy.
Well, there were, she heard voices in her room, and she said that there were several voices. They were all speaking at once, and they were all saying the same thing at the same time. And what they were saying is, there are 7 dead soldiers buried in the walls. There are 7 dead soldiers buried in the walls.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps
Over and over and
my
over
body.
and over again.
That means the truth has
To the
been
point
spoken.
of distraction, to the point that she could not sleep. And so she would come and crawl into bed with me. I had the big bed and plenty of room for everybody, and I very seldom did I wake up alone.
So
it was, somebody came to me for comfort or just because something had happened in their room that had frightened them. And so we learned very quickly that we were sharing space in that house, and that it was their house first.
Right.
So the way that we perceived it is, my mother basically once, within a 5 or 6 month period, we all understood that there was something. We didn't use the words supernatural. We didn't use the words paranormal. Those words did not come into, regular use in the vernacular for many years after that.
Okay.
It was just, we talked about the ghost. We saw the ghost. There was a ghost. There was, we didn't even know what we were seeing. We didn't know what we were feeling, what we were experiencing. We were just little kids. But it was also happening to my mother. The reason that Bathsheba was made the villainess of The Conjuring was because in 1973, when Ed and Lorraine Warren showed up at our kitchen door, and my mother did not go seek them out, she had no idea who they were when they came to the house. And it was the night before Halloween in 1973 that they showed up. And when they did, Mrs. Warren came in the house and she closed her eyes and touched our black stove, and she said, I sense a malignant presence in this house. Her name is Bathsheba. And Bathsheba Sherman, which was the only Bathsheba in that area at the time who did not live in that house, had married Judson Sherman and lived about a mile away at Sherman Farm, which was on an adjacent road. But she did have some connection to that house. And there was the town historian at the time knew her when he was a little boy. She died when he was 10 years old. She died in 1885. So he was very, very old when we met him. And he lived at one of the adjoining farms, property that adjoined our own on the back end of the 100 acres. And he, in Massachusetts, actually. And he's the one that told my mother that Bathsheba Sherman had been in that house and that she had an infant in her care and that the infant died in the house, and that when the body was examined, they found that a needle had been impaled at the base of its skull. And the cause of death was convulsions. And of course, there was an inquiry, an inquest, which happened in a nearby town, which was really kind of like the county seat at the time, in Chepachet, and there was no evidence. There was certainly no DNA evidence. There was nothing, to charge her with. She said, whatever happened, it had to have been an accident, and that she had nothing to do with it and would never have harmed a baby, et cetera, et cetera. And the judge in the case just dismissed it. But in the court of public opinion, she was, tried and convicted. And the women in town hated her. Apparently, she was a very beautiful woman because of the Revolutionary War and all the wars. There were a shortage of men, and women were very covetous of their husbands if they got one.
Right.
And so she was considered a threat by the women, and she was considered, a ravishing beauty by the men.
Or which.
So she had a reputation that hung over her life long. She lived from 1812 to 1885. The spirit that was haunting and taunting my mother was long dead before Bathsheba Sherman was even born.
Wow. So
I think maybe she just happened to look it up, to be honest. That's what I heard.
I mean,
So can I
go ahead.
So Andrea, do you know some of the names and such not besides the one that Lorraine Warren had given you? I keep hearing a name. So do you know what Wes means?
No. The thing is, it's almost like, I know this sounds callous, but to me, I don't care who they were. Mm-hmm. That they still are is what is amazing. Well, that they still inhabit or dwell there is amazing. None of them ever walked up and said, hello, my name is. So we don't know from any of them who they actually are. All we could do is discern from the historical record and things that happened in the area or in the house roughly at that time, who might be, who, what, when, where. I don't even really have any interest in determining who their character was. To me, the phenomenal thing is that there were spirits in the house.
They're just coming through
still,
right now.
I mean, I'm almost 60 years old. It still blows my mind that I've seen what I've seen in this life.
They want to talk to you. They're just coming through me
well,
right now.
I have actually had a spirit box session with George Lopez, who's, just deeply enmeshed in the scientific end of the exploration of this. And I did a ghost box, spirit box session with him one time, and he called her forth and she came, but she threw my voice and he told her, no, you don't get to use Andrea's voice, you use your own voice. And when she came back through, it was that almost of a little girl. I mean, she was a very diminutive woman, and she had a very small, kind of shrill voice. And she came through, and he asked her point blank what one word she associates with me, and she said love.
Wow.
So I spent 7 years of my life tethered to a keyboard to write the trilogy, House of Darkness, House of Light, that was supposed to be one book, and it was too big to print as one book. It had to be broken into 3 sections to tell the whole story of the 10 years that we lived in that house.
Wow.
And there were things that happened in that house that I did not include because my sisters asked me to leave those stories out.
Right.
But they have since gotten more comfortable with sharing, and they did allow me to put those stories into the screenplays.
Nice.
So there are actually going to be things in my films that people didn't get to read in the books. And, I might at some point go back and add them in, expand on some of the stories. But, for the most part, I think people get the gist of it. We were steeped and immersed in a place that had multiple dimensions in existence simultaneously.
Right.
There were one time particularly where my mother had her moment of epiphany when she finally understood what was happening in the house. And she'd gotten up late one night. She asked me to go make some food in the kitchen for her. I went through the dining room. All the lights were off. The house was shut down for the night. She was leaning over to throw another log on the fireplace, and she heard laughter behind her. And she turned around and looked into our dining room, and the dining room was fully lighted with candles and oil lamps. And there was a bunch of furniture in there that was not ours. And there was an entire family that was having dinner in our dining room. And she stared into that room and watched them. There were 2 men sitting at the table. One of them looked into the parlor and made direct eye contact with her and nudged the man beside him and pointed her out. And my mother was the ghost.
Right. And so the thing that
they were looking into the future while we were looking into the past.
Right. Exactly. Right.
I love the. I want to say this, but I want to make it to where it's. I liked the movie. Okay, let's put this. I liked the movie.
You have to move away from me. I'm sorry.
He will. I like the movie, but I find the stories and stuff, like watching the videos of Andrea telling the actual stories, I like what she portrayed through her lectures more so than the story, because I think we're in an age where people want to know more truth than they do superficial.
Hokey pokey.
Yeah, science fiction.
Yeah,
I mean, they want to know the truth.
And that's the underlying issue with films that are quote unquote based on a true story or true events or true. I mean, they literally conjured up their own third story. They cherry picked what Mrs. Warren had in her case files, and that was not accurate. But they took that and they used that as the foundation to write their own third story based on what I told them, based on what they had from her. They created their own third story. They went with, the Hollywood method, the formula that works, and that includes an exorcism, which never occurred in our house. Right. My mother was not possessed. My mother was attacked during a seance. And it was so horrible and so gruesome that it literally qualifies as the worst moments of my life. And thank God my mother has no recollection of it whatsoever, but I guarantee you everybody else that was in that room that night remembers every single detail of that night. And it is far worse than anything that was portrayed in The Conjuring. My mother never had a sheet thrown over her. She didn't levitate upside down in her chair. And Ed Warren would never in a million years have attempted to conduct an exorcism on his own. He was literally the only layperson in the world at that time that was trained in the sacred rite of exorcism through the Catholic Church. And as a devout Catholic, he would never have broken his own vows to the exorcists who trained him and taken matters into his own hands in that way. That would never have happened. And I know that because Lorraine Warren was crying when she said to me, Ed would never have done that. Not ever would he have done that.
No.
So there were elements of the film that were upsetting. I mean, I watched it more as a master work in terms of filmmaking. I thought James Wan did a remarkably good job with it, and there were elements of the film that were true, and there were very strange things that happened in the movie that they couldn't possibly have known about, including the scene where the camera kind of banks around and goes into my room, and the young lady who played me in the film was Shanley Caswell. And as the camera comes into her room, if you watch the film again, you'll see that there's a folk art drawing of a white cat propped up on the mantelboard in her bedroom. I have that exact same picture that was given to me for my 13th birthday when we lived at the farm by my mother's best friend. I found it at a flea market, and I fell in love with it. And it was 50 cents, and I asked my mother if she would buy it for me for my birthday, which was the next day. And my mother didn't have 50 cents on her to buy me that picture, so her girlfriend did.
Right. I remember that.
And to see that picture up on the mantelboard in Andrea's bedroom told me everything that I needed to know. Nobody working on that film knew that I was in possession of that picture. Nobody had ever seen it. I never gave them any inside photographs of the house. All they wanted for photographs from me was a picture of our family together, which appears at the end of the film. It's reason enough to go buy a lottery ticket. What are the chances that in the the set and stage design department that they went through stuff from the 70s and picked out the exact same picture that I've had in my possession for these many decades?
That is crazy.
It's impossible.
Right.
They used the same wallpaper print that we had inside the house. They didn't know what the wallpaper looked like in the house. There are 25,000 different patterns of colonial type wallpaper. Right. And they chose the one that we had in the house without ever knowing. So there were cosmic connections between our story and that story, and many, many more. I never even put in the book that our dog was killed right after we moved to the house. I did not put it in the book because I thought that it was such a sad story and the way he died was so terrible that I didn't want to run off my reader by, having them close the book and go, I just can't do this. This is too sad. This is too morose. This is too, oh my God. So I left it out.
Right.
And there it was in the film of their dog Sadie. And it was actually our dog Schultz that was killed.
Wow.
I mean, they could have been playing off what they read about one of the reasons that we moved from Cumberland was because Cumberland was encroaching on us. There was a lot of negative behavior, a lot of negative attitudes. The boys all seemed to go from being our playmates one year to budding criminals the next. And one of the things that happened while we lived there was that my father came home with a puppy one day, and my mother picked up the puppy and held her up in her arms, and she said, this is a special dog. She deserves an equally special name. And she closed her eyes, and when she opened her eyes, she said Bathsheba. Now, none of us had ever heard that name. We didn't know the biblical reference to it. We did not know where that came from. And the first thing that we did, since it was a big, hard, long name, was we abbreviated it, and she became Sheba. But my mother named that dog Bathsheba. And then 3 years later, we were living at the farm. That dog had been killed in a terrible accident. And I was so devastated because she really became my dog. And it was in my care that she died. That I just didn't want to live there anymore. I didn't want to be there anymore. I didn't want to be in that neighborhood. I didn't want to know the neighbors. I didn't want to interact with anybody. I just shut down. And so part of the reason why my mother went searching for another home was because of the emotional distress that I was in. And she thought maybe a change of venue and a place in the country would be best to raise her girls. And that's how we ended up with the farm.
And I think most parents back then, they did care about their children enough back then to where they did, they cared about that stuff. So that's, yeah. I mean, my parents did the same thing at one point, And you live in a small little trailer park and, you fight with kids and this and that and everything else. And, things just become so negative for you that you eventually have to move away and find happiness, So no matter what it is, when your parents care, especially if you have a child in distress, you move. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
I want to kind of, skip forward here a little bit and talk about Bathsheba some more, because now the story that you relayed was that she was taking care of an infant that had died because of a pin or a crochet, hook or whatever it is was embedded in the back.
No, it was a sewing needle.
A sewing needle, sorry.
It was a sewing,
was put in the back of the head and, killed the child. I know that after this story, or I should say after the movie, not the story, the movie that we had talked about, I saw the videos and the stuff, and I saw your YouTube video that came out where it devastated you because somebody actually went and destroyed Bathsheba's headstone.
Gravestone.
Yep. And crushed it.
Yep.
They went out of their way to go to this place in Harrisville and destroy a headstone of Bathsheba's because of this story.
Since it came out.
Yeah, since the story came out. Since the movie came out.
Disgusting.
Well, if you watch, I mean, it just shows you where people's minds are today versus where they were in the 70s.
Right.
The caring is not.
Well,
I
know it. It's very sad, and to desecrate somebody's final resting place, because of a film is and a fictionalized one at that, is just to me the height of ignorance. And there was a lot of the weirdos and the freaks and the lunatic fringe came out of the woodwork after the movie opened, and there were a number of people that trespassed on the property, and the current owner went ballistic, and blamed me for everything, even though I was putting out one video after another asking people to please stay away from the farm. The film wasn't made there. That's private property. There's a family living there. Leave them in peace. And yet people were seeking it out. And so it created a rift between us.
Right.
And it's very unfortunate that it happened, and a 28-year friendship just imploded.
Yeah.
And she took to the airwaves and said, "Go away, no ghosts here. The Perron family made it all up," and she knew that wasn't true. So she has to live with that. She has to live with the falsehoods that she told afterwards. She went so far as to say that I never told her there was going to be a movie made when the producer that actually made the movie contacted her to get in touch with my family, with me. And so she's the one that passed my number on to the producer of The Conjuring. And that's the truth. And I've got all the paperwork in the world to back it up. And, she did a complete 180. This is someone who invited one paranormal investigative team after another into that house for close to 30 years without me knowing about it. So she did know. She bought the house because of its reputation, and she was fascinated by it. And she wanted to know more and more, and she wanted it to get very, very famous. And then when it did, but it did not benefit her specifically, because she had an agreement with Warner Brothers, with New Line Cinema actually, that they could use the house to film in. But then when they brought James Wan onto the project and he read my book, he said, "Absolutely not. I will not go near that house. I will not step foot in Rhode Island. We will find another house and we will film there, far, far away from that farm." And he admitted that he was scared. After he read the books and talked to me and talked to members of my family, he just said, "That's nothing that I'm going to mess with." And so they ended up choosing a house in North Carolina, of all places. And that's the house that they used in the movie. And then they rebuilt it on a sound stage in Wilmington, North Carolina, for the inside scenes. And did all the outside shots on the remote location.
Wow.
So anyway, her end of the deal and what would have, benefited her financially, they had, believe me, when they write a contract, they've got everything's on their side of the table, you know what I mean? And so they didn't have to honor that contract. It was right in the contract so that they could renege on it if they wanted to. But she signed it, and she thought she was going to have a relative boatload of money come her way for her to move out of that house and for them to use it to film the movie. So to say that she never knew there was going to be a movie is
ludicrous,
disingenuous at best, a bald-faced lie at worst. And, when I can stick up for myself, I am perfectly capable of defending myself. But when you attack my, 78-year-old mother, and she's already been to hell and back in this life, that's war. And so, I let her know that, if she kept it up, that we were going to have a problem. And, people have the power of discernment. This is probably the most well-researched, well-documented haunting in the United States of America. This goes back, this story has been told, and stories of the farm have been told in writing going back to the 1800s. Wow. So, for her to say that I somehow ruined her life by telling my story is just a crock. And, for somebody who was all very, very excited at first and, buying my books to give to family and friends and, having me, I'd go visit and I'd be sitting at her kitchen table signing books for her family and friends, then to turn around and say, it's all made up. I guarantee you, I'll tell you what, Ted, I did not, in the prime of my life, to the exclusion of all else, park myself in front of a computer for 7 years where I remained tethered so that I could concoct one big, fat, elaborate lie. And if anybody doubts that, all they need to do is ask anyone who knows me in terms of my veracity as an individual. I told our story because the world was ready for it.
Right.
I told our story because the world deserved to know the truth.
Right. And, one of the things that I do is, being a radio host, is I like to research the people that I interview. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to do that research. So I went back and I actually saw some of the video that was recorded in that house with you and her sitting side by side talking about what she experienced in that home. Yeah. So that in itself is video that is out there that she agreed to, okay? And that she herself had stated in the video that this stuff has happened. So it's all on her, I guess. And it's said that unfortunately that money is the root of all evil, and unfortunately that's what happens with most people, is money is what they're thinking about. And to have a location like that farmhouse and that property that has that much history and paranormal activity, people like myself that spend 30 years of their lives, 31 years of their lives researching this stuff, if I had a chance and had the money to buy a place like that, believe me, I would be telling as much as I could about the place.
Absolutely.
Because it's important to the field. It's important that people realize that, you know what? Some of the stuff that's really out there in this world, just because you can't see it, doesn't mean it isn't real. All right? It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And having a house that has spirits and ghosts, and it could be a farm that has UFO sightings every night. It's important to the field. It's important to the science of it. And if you have a place such as that, like the Virgin House that I spent 3 years in researching, that it's an opportunity to bring new light to people to understand the things that they lived through, like you did. It's to bring all this forward. Yeah. To bring it up front. I mean, believe me, Andrea, I feel your pain when you tell your stories. And at the same time, the curiosity gets me so much that I wanted to be there, And I understand the emotions and just what you went through. Do I know everything that happened? No. Do I have to know everything? No. But when you tell the story, and when you are very emotional about what happened, empathy is one of those things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
It's like when I talk about it, it's like I'm right back there.
Yeah, like you're reliving it.
And one of my lines in the book that I use several times in the trilogy is childhood trauma, the gift that keeps on giving. Once you experience something like that.
I just had that yesterday, early this morning.
Yeah.
I mean,
really, once you've experienced something like that, you don't forget any element of it, nothing about it. It's like it's like a branding iron has seared it into your brain. Yeah. And you remember the temperature of the room and the scent of the air and how the light was and, every single aspect of the experience. And, they're very often quick and fleeting. They don't last a long period of time. But the thing that I found so interesting in terms of my perceptions as a 12-year-old moving into the house was that when I saw that first initial apparition, he appeared absolutely solid to me. I said good morning to him because I thought that I was speaking to a living, breathing human being who just chose to ignore me, the little kid coming through the room. It didn't occur to me that I was looking at a ghost at all. It just never even occurred to me.
And why would you?
And I remember thinking he was dressed so funny and wondering if now that we were living out in the country, if everybody dressed like that. Because when you're a little kid, and you see something new, your mind spirals off into different. It never occurred to me that he was dead.
Right.
Right.
And you know the other part of that is that because of the way emotions rule the human body and the mind, fear is a wonderful tool.
Right.
It really is, because it makes you pay attention. You may not believe that you see all of this when you're going through it emotionally,
Right.
but if you sit down and you calm down and you close your eyes, the detail that you can pull out of that experience
Yeah.
is unbelievable.
That's right. I agree.
It's unbelievable. You know, and
Well, Frank Herbert, the great writer, said that the beginning of knowledge is the discovery of something we do not understand. No, and that's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
yeah,
You have to face something that you've never faced before to have real, true, first-person knowledge of it. And as a paranormal investigator, I'm sure you've had plenty of encounters that have made your hair stand on end, but every single time you have an encounter, every single time you are touched by spirit, it expands your consciousness in a way that nothing else could. Nothing else could. Carl Sagan, the great astronomer, said absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
Right.
I think that it's just a few words, but some of the most profound and wise words that have ever been written or spoken. That's absolutely true. My mother got so angry at my father one time that she kind of, not to hurt him or anything, she wasn't like that, but she kind of leaned him up against a wall and gotten in his face, and she said, the existence of the spirits is not contingent upon your belief in them, Roger.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. It's the truth.
See, and to me, I go back and I'm just backing up a little bit, but being a paranormal investigator, the skeptic in me, I mean, just because I believe what she says doesn't mean, because I'm skeptical, that's the way you should be in the paranormal field. Just because I believe what she feels doesn't mean I totally believe. But the emotion and everything that she has is that telltale sign of something emotional, something tragic, something happened.
Something's there.
Believe that.
Right.
Believe the human energy that she's radiating.
Right.
Believe the emotion and all that stuff, because something really did happen. And it's nothing against anybody that believes in ghosts. I can't, because I'm trying to find the existence of it.
Right.
Where, like you and Andrea, you guys believe.
I do.
You guys believe.
I'm literally, as we speak, trying to keep them away from me. If I sit back down, I literally will be gone. Because they're already trying to.
It's like, her other love is UFOs. And,
that's cool,
I watched one of her talks at a convention, and I couldn't believe. I don't remember where it was, Andrea, but I was so pissed while I was watching it, and I'll explain. It wasn't you; it was the crowd, because nobody was laughing at the humor that you were putting off. I'm like, how dare they not laugh or giggle at her with the comments that she was making?
Oh, they were. They had a microphone on me, so it kind of blocked out everything else. They were
pissed.
actually very open to it, even though they do tend to be stuffed shirts sometimes, that crowd.
That's exactly what I thought they were.
They do.
That's funny.
I was like,
well,
oh my God.
The thing is that when I walk into one of those, I'm the dumb kid. Do you understand? These are people that have numerous PhDs. These are people who have devoted, decades of the study of science around UFOs. And here I walk in and I'm basically declaring that you can have your connection with extraterrestrials, and it's all love-based. And I am very enthusiastic and very vibrant in the way that I tell the experiences that I have had. And so it kind of throws them a little bit. But I want to shake them up a little bit. They need to understand it's not all about connection from the head. This isn't about making a cerebral connection. This is making a heart connection with them. That's the level that they're on. These are 5th dimensional, 7th dimensional, 9th dimensional light beings. They're not like us. They are just like us in many other respects, but they're so evolved. They're so spiritually sophisticated compared to humanity that we're really not on the same wavelength yet. We're working on that. And there are some of us on the planet that are working on it much more than others. Most people are unaware. They don't want to know. They're not tuned in.
Right.
They don't want to tune in. This is overwhelming to them. And so they are willfully ignorant because that's a blissful state of being.
Mm-hmm.
They live their day-to-day lives in the monotony of their routines, and everything feels comfortable and compartmentalized in a 3-dimensional, 5-sensory box.
Right.
And that's not the truth of our existence. That is a fractional element of our existence as universal beings.
Look what I did.
And we're not alone in the universe. And the one thing that I will have to take umbrage with is what you were saying earlier about that we believe. I don't believe. I know.
I know.
And
I
there
was
is
just
a
gonna
quantum
say,
leap of difference between
Right.
believing something and knowing something.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
That was my mistake.
I will be the first one to tell you I don't know something. I will be the first one to say I don't understand this yet.
Right.
It seems all magical and stuff, but magic is just science we don't understand yet.
Correct.
But I do know what I do know. And what I do know is that we don't just die, that we go on, because I have seen and sensed in every conceivable way the presence of spirit in my life since I was 12, and I'm almost 60. And this has been something that has been a consistent part of my life for almost my entire life.
Right.
And my connection with extraterrestrials also began at the farm. I'm quite certain that there is a point of correlation and integration between the two. And I think that part of priming the pump and preparing the ground for me to have the connections that I was destined to have with extraterrestrials had to start in a haunted house so that I could do this incrementally and see 4th dimensionally before I could see 5th dimensionally.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I agree.
And that's actually how it is for me, too.
And that's why I said you two were going to get along.
Yeah.
The other thing was, and this is just my humor, when you were talking about the love, all I could picture in my head, and please don't take this wrong, my sense of humor with Scooby-Doo and everything else is I saw a UFO painted up with flowers and stuff from the 70s.
Oh my gosh, there was a UFO Scooby-Doo one.
And it just popped in my head, and that's why I giggled a little.
Well, just tell me that whatever that ET was wearing, it had a nice big Dayglow tie-dyed peace sign on its chest.
Yes, that's
If I was to imagine that, then yes, that's what it would have been. But yeah, it just... I love the fact that people like yourself, Andrea, can come on this show and have the passion and the energy.
Yes.
And just express yourself with this. Now, when the first time you were on Paratalk Radio, we were very reserved in certain things, and we didn't allow certain things to happen. But we have since changed networks, and we are now an explicit, mature audience. We say what's on our minds. We don't hold back anymore. We do not throw disclaimers out there to our guests that you can't swear, you can't do this, you can't do that. All things are off the table. And our fans that watch the show want to hear the truth, no matter how it comes out of our mouths. And that's why I wanted to have you back, because I didn't want you to hold anything back. And I know you won't, which is great.
Yeah.
At the same time...
No, I never have, and I never will. And I tell every person that I do a show with that there are no questions off the table. I have nothing to hide.
In the video with your sister and your father, where your sister swore and she was embarrassed about it, I think it was amazing. I loved it. I thought it showed more truth. You know what I mean? More fact and more truth with what she said because of that. You know what I mean? And it was amazing.
Yeah, I'll never let her live that down for the rest of her life.
Well, if I ever meet her, I'll help you with that. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
I do have a question that was asked in the chat, which is, did they ever find the bodies of those soldiers in the walls, or no?
Did anybody ever look for them?
Right.
Is what my question was.
Yeah, did anybody actually uncover those bodies?
Well, what happened was the house went through, after we left, we all moved to Georgia. Nancy stayed for a number of months, stayed on as the caretaker, and then about a year later, she moved down to Georgia too. Maybe a little longer than that, might have been 2 years, but she stayed up there when the rest of us left. And in the process of the new owners restoring the house to its original colonial splendor, for some reason, they sealed off the wall where that activity was. And it's completely closed now. It would have to be dismantled and literally pulled apart to be able to get to the eaves under which Cindy said those voices were coming from.
Got it.
So I don't know if anybody ever looked. I don't know what the status is. Cindy said to me one time, she said she crawled into bed with me and she was telling me, she heard the voices again, and it got so loud she couldn't believe that it didn't wake everybody up in the house, and it was shaking the walls and it was shaking the floors, and she was so terrified, and she was just all cuddled up in my arms, and she looked up to me with tears in her eyes, bless her little heart, and she said, "They don't have any reason to lie. They wouldn't lie about that. Why would they lie to us?"
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And talking about the soldiers saying that they were still in the house. In other words, she was taking their word for it, that there were 7 dead soldiers that wanted to be discovered. And when you think about the age of that house, it was completed as it stands now. It started back in the 1600s, and then they added on and turned it into a massive farmhouse. And but it was completed in 1736, which was 40 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
So that house went through the Civil War, it went through the Revolutionary War, it went through the Dorr Rebellion, it went through, there were border skirmishes, there were all kinds of activity because Connecticut was trying to encroach on the little colony of Rhode Island from the west, and the Massachusetts Bay Colony was trying to encroach on it from the north and the east. And so Roger Williams, the founder of the colony, parsed out huge tracts of land to the original settlers that followed him down from the Massachusetts Bay Colony when he founded Rhode Island, and parcels of like 2,000 acres plus. And that's why the state of Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the Union, has the longest name. Its official name is the State of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. And the original Arnold Estate was one of the original Providence plantations.
Wow.
And it was right in the corner of the state, so that it created the boundary between Massachusetts and Connecticut, and was fiercely defended. So there were probably numerous deaths that happened on that property, not to mention the fact that before the colonists even came down, that whole entire area belonged to the Nipmuc Indians. And we had many sightings of Indians on that property. It wasn't just the house and it wasn't just the barn. We saw things out on the property as well, including down at the old cellar hole where the original house was, that was quite small. And the cellar hole is not that big. And we actually saw apparitions of the people that lived in that house, and we saw Indian children playing in the forest.
Yeah. See, that's amazing stuff. That's why I'm in the paranormal field. That's why I do the research that I do. It's for stories such as that, and it's just amazing stuff. And, there are people on our chat rooms talking about all this, and it's just amazing that the history, and that's one of my biggest things, is the history of
90
places.
seconds.
Yeah. Ignore you. we love history, and that's one of the biggest things with the paranormal is you have to have the history to go along with everything else that you do for research. But yeah, I want to say to you, Andrea, thank you so much for sharing your story with the world, because I really do believe you were supposed to say it. You were supposed to spell it out for us. You were supposed to show it. And
60 seconds.
Oh, shush up. And I really think that the movies that you're going to be creating, showing the truth behind all of this, is going to be phenomenal. I am so, and this is something that I brought up when you and I spoke before, is that in the beginning of paranormal investigation, which really wasn't the paranormal, it was considered the unknown, the researchers out there used what they had at that time. There was no book, there wasn't anybody else leading them or explaining to them how to do things. It was all by trial and error, and the Warrens were susceptible to that. They did, fault on things. They made mistakes. Dr. Hans Holzer made mistakes. Anybody that researched the paranormal back then made mistakes because we didn't know enough about it, and we still don't know enough about it. And because we're still just, as I say over and over again, we're just now scratching the surface of finding pieces to put together this puzzle.
Correct.
And we'll probably all be dead.
When I first wrote, and I don't know if we're even necessarily supposed to have the answers. I think that more importantly, it's the questions that we ask. And I think that that's where the expansion comes in. But, when I first wrote the books, I didn't know if there would even be an audience for them. And I was quite surprised to find out that people really, really wanted to know the truth behind the movie. And it was just an amazing transformation that occurred, because so many people that have read the books are now so disenchanted with the film. And, and I tell them, just think of them as totally separate, distinct entities. One really has nothing to do with the other except for the names and likenesses.
Right.
But The Conjuring leaves the audience with impressions. And that's what they got right. And that was the most important thing for them to get right, was that good conquers evil, love conquers fear. The Perron family endured an extreme haunting that they all survived. Those are the things that the audience is left with, and that's the truth.
Right.
So, even though they took, creative liberties and license and changed the story to fit, their 2 hours of time and, blamed everything on Bathsheba because that's what Mrs. Warren had in her case file, even though that was incorrect. The film was based on the case files, and the entire series of films is based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. But the reason that they made our story first was because prior to his death, Ed asked Lorraine to make sure while she was still earthbound that she did everything in her power to make sure that the Perron family story was told, because he, in his own words, written and verbal, said that of all of the 40 years of investigations that they conducted as a couple, that it was the most intense, compelling, disturbing, and significant of all of the investigations. And they also admitted that they were in over their heads, that they never expected what they saw and the experiences that they had in that house. Now, things did not end well with the Warrens, and my father threw them out of the house and used language that I didn't know existed at that time. He was absolutely livid, out of his mind, furious with them, because what happened to my mother that night during the seance that they compelled my parents to do, and said that it was absolutely necessary. Lorraine looked up at my father and she just growled at him. And she said, "If you love your wife, you'll let us do this." Well, what they did almost cost my mother her life that night.
Oh my goodness.
And he was out of his mind angry. And when she was tossed from the middle of our dining room into the center of our parlor and her head struck the floor, and everyone present in that house, including 4 of the 5 children, heard that happen, we all thought we had just seen our mother die.
Oh my gosh.
It was absolutely horrific.
Yeah,
And when my father went to run to my mother's side, Ed grabbed his arm to try to stop him, and my father turned around and cold-cocked him and broke his nose and took a man almost twice his size to the floor. And that didn't somehow make it into their case files. So that's, what really happened will be in our films. And Lorraine is very well aware of what happened that night. Ed, rest his soul, is very well aware of what happened that night. And no one will keep me from telling the truth of it.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Right.
That's the way it should be. All right. Well, unfortunately, I do want to say that Andrea is coming back. We're going to be talking about her second love, or first love, I should say, her original first love. And we're going to be talking about ufology when she comes back.
Awesome.
And we're going to spend 2 hours, I promise, 2 hours with her on that subject. I do want to bring up real quick that next week's show on Monday, we have Rebecca Smuck, who is the Motor City medium. She's internationally renowned. Renowned. And, yep. And respected spiritually. She's a medium. She has spent her life helping people in need.
Fantastic.
She's one of those highly giving individuals. She specializes in violent or highly volatile hauntings. And that's what she specializes in, and she's going to tell us some of that when she joins us on Monday. So make sure you tune in. And that is Rebecca Smuck, the Motor City medium. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry we got to cut this off. We will definitely see you in the next date that we have set, and we're going to spend an amazing amount of time with you. And just so you know, I love you. You are an awesome individual, and your energy is amazing. And I wish you and your father and the rest of your family, goodness and light. I really do.
Can I ask her one question?
Thank you.
Sure.
So I have one of our friends here that is asking, not spirit friends, but actually chat room friends. They were interested in knowing if you think there's a connection, if you believe or think that there's a connection between spirits and extraterrestrials opening your mind more. So do you think there's some kind of correlation? I wanted to answer them and say the same thing because I do believe that there is a correlation somehow, somewhere, some way between the two. If one or both open to the other. But I was curious, so thank you. Go ahead.
Well, yes, because I feel like everything is energy, everything is one thing.
Absolutely.
And so everything is interconnected. And there is some point of correlation, I believe, between the two, absolutely, even though some are considered dead by our definition, and the extraterrestrials are sentient, prescient, living beings.
Right.
They understand, I think, the notion of death in a much deeper way than we do.
Yeah.
That's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have anything else, like House of Darkness, House of Light
on YouTube. Andrea Perron on YouTube.
Yeah.
What else, Andrea, can they find you on?
I'm everywhere. I've got 5 different pages on Facebook. I'm very easy to find there. Even though I've been at my friend limit of 5,000 for a number of years, people can still connect with me through Messenger that way. And also, I have a fan page called the Buttercup Brigade. They can hop on there. I have a House of Darkness, House of Light page. A World Awakening page, which is all about my extraterrestrial stuff, and In a Flicker has its own fan page as well. So I'm very easy to get in touch with, and I'm working on updating my website, but that's House of Darkness, houseoflight.com. It's stale and it needs a lot of work, but I've been writing screenplays and books, and I haven't gotten to it yet because there's only one of me in 24 hours in a day, but I'm working on it. And it's just very easy to find me. All they have to do is Google my name. And as for the books, everything's available. The least expensive and fastest way to get any of my books is directly from Amazon. They ship within a day. And if you buy it from a bookstore, they always tack on more. It's ridiculous, the prices that they put on the books if you order it from Barnes and Noble or whatever. So I just tell people go to Amazon.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, let's throw this in there too. Are there any major events that you're coming up where they can see you or hear you?
Yes, I'll be at the Ocean State Paracon in July 14th. Hold on, let me look at my calendar. I'll be, in Rhode Island, in Harrisville, Rhode Island, in my hometown. And that is July 14th and 15th at the Ocean State Paracon, which has tons of fabulous paranormal investigators. There's so many up in the New England area that it really is like a big paranormal love fest, like a big family reunion. It's a fabulous event. And then in August, I will be in Sault Ste. Marie at the Upper Peninsula, Michigan Paracon, and I am their UFO point person this year.
Oh, nice.
And that's the 24th and 25th and 26th of August. So if anybody's up in the frozen tundra and wants to come, please avail yourself of it. And just go to my Facebook, my personal Facebook page, and I've got banners, promos for the different events that are coming up. I'm also doing the UFO Contact in September up in Michigan as well. Michigan's a hotbed of activity, paranormal activity, and also huge fascination for people up there. I guess probably because it's winter 10 months out of the year and they've got nothing else to do. But, it's, they have to stay inside, so they pull out their K2 meters. I don't know what it is exactly, but, it's there's a whole crowd of them up there, and it's an amazing place and God's country. I think it's just fabulous, and I'm looking forward to it. I actually have a number of lectures coming up, and I'll have everything posted on my Facebook page and in numerous places. So it's easy to find me.
Michigan is also the where there is more sightings of the dogman.
Yeah, I was thinking the same exact thing.
It's out of my head. So so that's
we do that a lot. My friend.
We are going to be at Scarefest this year in September
14th to the 16th.
14th to the 16th, but the month before, August 13th, 14th, and 15th, I think, is we're going to be at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember when that one was.
Yep, so we're going to be doing that. And then the world's largest ghost hunt on September 29th. So we've got a lot going on for ourselves.
Indeed.
Plus, Paratalk Radio on the road. We're going to all those other locations. And
August 6th, fangirling for Chip Coffee and Grant.
It's really great.
Wilson.
Well, the next time you go to Michigan, just know one thing. While I was up there, Bigfoot saw me, and no one believes him.
I love it.
we're going to have to make a T-shirt.
Oh, my God. That was awesome.
It is a T-shirt. I stole it. I've got the T-shirt.
There
I
you
stole
go.
that from somebody's T-shirt.
That's
It was not
so
my
funny.
original idea, but I think it was really cute.
That is
But yeah,
really
I'm
cute.
sure if Bigfoot exists, it's in Michigan.
Definitely.
Because, there's like 10 people and 6 billion acres to drive across
and that's
to get from one point to the other.
We did have somebody on here that was saying just that.
Yeah.
Dogman and Bigfoot.
Yeah.
That's what she was saying.
And we need to hook up sometime and at one of these Paracons or something and chat. It would be awesome. I'd love it. I just got a message from one of our spooky friends, one of our gentlemen, our clowns, our horror clowns, Mr. Stitches. We are planning another date for him coming back too, so folks watch out for that as well, because Mr. Stitches will be back. And we have some sad news.
Sad news, guys, is that Mungie has decided to hang up his clown mask.
Yeah, so
he's decided to retire Mungie. So we're sad, but we're going to keep in touch with him, and we love him.
Yeah,
and
he's part
we want
of
him
this
to
show.
know that he's part of us. Yeah, we love him.
Definitely. All right, Andrea,
thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much. You're fantastic.
We love you here. You're always welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I enjoy your energy.
Thank you. We will have. We'll have more. If you think this was good, wait till you get me on the topic of UFOs.
Oh, I know.
There's just nothing.
The energy is going to be.
Woo, woo, woo.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
But I have to leave at 7:00 tomorrow morning to go up to Georgia. And so I've got a full day of driving ahead. So I will say my good nights. Thank everyone for listening in, and go throw myself horizontal for a little while so that I can not have to sleep at the wheel tomorrow.
All right.
Please drive carefully.
All right. Be safe, Andrea.
Thank you
again so
much. It was nice to chat with you. Take care. Drive careful.
Lovely. You too.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us here at Paratalk
guys,
Radio.
for listening
This is probably one of the longest shows we've ever had.
It is, yes.
And it
might be the second longest.
Yeah, but you know what? It's been a great show. It's been a great evening, and the information we had, we now realize that Matt Moneymaker needs his own show.
Absolutely.
He has so much energy and so much information that he needs to share with us and our fans. You guys, you had so many questions. We couldn't get them all in there, so we will have Matt back, as well as Andrea will be back as well. And as I said, Stitches will have his own show as well. We will have him back as well. Don't forget that Rebecca Smuck, who is the Motor City Medium, will be next Monday. So make sure you tune in. And remember... Go ahead.
I didn't want to end just yet because I know you guys are worried about me. I'm going to do some heavy duty work after I get off of this because when people don't want or are not open to hearing the messages, it's very difficult for me. So forgive me for having to stand. I literally had to take my sneakers off because it's like the concrete ground, so I had to ground. I took Ted's hand for a minute, and I just need to ground more because I'm literally being drained. So I don't want you to worry. I'm going to work on getting my energy back up. So thank you guys for talking in the things and thinking about me and worrying. So please don't worry anymore.
And we don't want to forget the second stop from Paratalk Radio on the road
in Batavia.
In Batavia, New York. We're going to be there. It's July 9th. We're going to be there for 2 hours doing a live remote.
Yes.
The place is the Go Art Building. Recently has just popped up as being a haunted location where we were Genesee Valley Paranormal Investigators was the first team to investigate. And you know we had been there. We're actually going back again, but
fantastic.
It's actually will be included on Haunted History Trails in New York hopefully soon.
That would be awesome.
We're still reaching out to them and stuff like that, but we want you guys if you're in local, please come out and see us. Come join us. Bring a chair and enjoy the show and be a part of the audience.
Absolutely,
we're going to be speaking
guys.
with.
We would love to have you there at all of our events.
Right.
The first one is.
The first one we did, which was in Pennsylvania, which was fun.
So
this was the second one.
Okay.
We are interviewing Melanie Elizabeth from Naked
August
and Afraid.
6th is the one I'm thinking.
Yeah,
of.
we're going
to win it. Oh, we didn't do a.
we're going to do that before we leave.
Yeah.
But Melanie Elizabeth, she has some ghost stories for us, and she was one of the only female contestants that made it all the way straight through. And we're going to talk about that as well and go from there. Now,
we got to give you a word.
Got to give you a word. So, and the reason we're doing this, we'll discuss it real quick, is that August 6th, why don't you tell them while I get the marker.
August 6th, I'm fangirling. You guys all know I'm fangirling. It is Chip Coffee and Grant Wilson from Ghost Hunters. And, of course, we will be at the Fox Sisters original site of their house. And that'll be in Hydesville, New York. So we'll have, 5 tickets? Mm-hmm. So we have 5 tickets, and you guys are collecting the words that we are showing you. Nobody's allowed to post them. This is only if you're watching that you can participate. So if you're listening to us on the radio side of it, you need to come and watch the Facebook or the YouTube or the Periscope.
Yep, or the Periscope.
Because that's the only place you guys will be able to actually get the words. And our word is...
Remember, folks, do not post
it. Do not share it. It is not... This is part of the fun.
Do not put it on the chat, folks.
Correct.
Do not do that.
Yeah.
So because we only have 5 seats. That's it.
5.
So you have a few more words.
So we want you guys to come.
Yeah, so we have a few more words to go before August 6th. And once you have them all collected, we will see who wins. All right, you guys.
You guys.
Are you ready, Zach?
You. We love you.
Ready.
We appreciate you.
All right. Everybody say hello and good night to Zach because he is filling in for the Invisible John. Thank you so much, Zach, for helping us out. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Last week and
Very
this
welcome.
week. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Good job, buddy.
All right, everybody. You know that we care about you. You know that we love you. And don't forget, wherever there is darkness, there is always
delight.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Thank you for stopping by.
Mwah.
We appreciate it.
You've been listening to Paratalk Radio with Ted Wolf and Psychic Cindy. Catch us next Monday when we will bring you another fantastic guest.
Thank you to our guests, our sponsors, and J. Wolf Productions. Be safe, be good, and remember, wherever there is darkness, there is always the light. ParatalkRadio.com.